Foster boy jumped into an icy lake to save a dog. Next morning, bikes lined up outside his school. The ice didn't crack like in movies. It sighed, soft, almost polite. Then the entire lake snapped open under Noah's boots like a trap door. 1 second he was staring at a black and tan dog scrambling on glassy ice, claws skittering, eyes wide with pure panic. The next, freezing water punched the air out of his chest, and the world turned dark. Noah didn't even think about it. He just moved. He'd been in 3 foster homes in 2 years. He knew how fast things could go bad when adults hesitated. So when the dog yelped and slid, he stepped off the shore without checking the ice, without checking for anyone else, without checking anything except that the animal was about to die. The dog was maybe 30 feet out, close enough to hear its breath, ragged, barking in bursts like it was calling for help and warning him away at the same time. Around the lake, the town was quiet in that dead winter way, the kind of quiet that made every sound sharp, a distant car door, a crow, the whine of wind over frozen reeds. Noah's backpack tugged at his shoulders as he walked. A thin crust of snow hid the ice, and he couldn't tell where it was solid and where it was hollow. He put his weight down carefully, heel then toe, like he'd seen people do. Every step made a tiny groan under him. "Hey," he called, voice cracking. "It's okay. I've got you." The dog barked again and scrambled backward, sliding on its belly. It wasn't trying to run. It didn't have anywhere to go. It was trapped in the middle of a lake, surrounded by slick white and gray, with nothing to dig into. Noah kept moving. He was 5 steps from the dog when the ice sighed that soft, polite sound. Then it just gave up. His left leg dropped through first. The ice tore around his thigh, and his whole body lurched forward. He threw his hands out instinctively, palms slapping the surface, but the ice wasn't a floor anymore. It was shards. He felt the edge scrape his wrist as he tried to grab hold, and then he was under. The cold wasn't cold. It was violence. It drove straight into his skin, into his ribs, into his teeth. His lungs seized like they were being crushed. For a second he couldn't tell which way was up. The gray sky disappeared. All he could see was a blur of bubbles and darker water. He kicked hard, wild, and his boot hit something solid. Ice. He shoved up with both hands and broke through again, gasping so hard it hurt. The dog was right there. It had dropped to its belly at the edge of the hole, paws splayed, claws scratching uselessly on the slick surface. Its muzzle was inches from Noah's face, breath coming in frantic bursts, eyes locked on him like it couldn't decide whether to bite or beg. Noah grabbed the dog's collar, or tried to. There was a collar, but his fingers were numb already, clumsy. The strap was soaked and stiff. The dog jerked away, panicking, and Noah's hand slid off. He almost went under again. "Stop!" he choked, not at the dog exactly, more at the chaos. "Stop, please!" The dog's front paws slipped into the hole, and it yelped, half a scream. Noah lunged and caught its scruff, a handful of thick fur. The dog thrashed. Noah braced his elbows on the ice, tried to pull himself up at the same time, but his coat was heavy and waterlogged, and his backpack was dragging him down. He planted his forearms on the ice like anchors and pulled with everything he had. The ice cut into his sleeves. His skin burned where the water hit air. He got the dog's chest onto the surface, then its shoulders. The dog kicked and scrabbled and finally found friction, sliding away from the hole in short jerks. Noah didn't let go. He crawled after it, dragging himself with his elbows, legs still in the water. Every movement felt slow, like the lake was trying to keep him. His breath came in harsh, ugly gasps. He could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. "On the shore!" someone shouted. Noah turned his head. Near the tree line, a couple of kids from school stood by the path, older than him, varsity jacket on one, phone up in the air like a periscope. Another person, an adult, had stopped their truck and gotten out, but instead of running, they were just watching. "Don't move!" someone yelled, like Noah was a problem to manage. "Stay where you are!" Noah wanted to scream at them to help, but he didn't have the oxygen for it. He inched forward, elbows scraping. He pushed the dog ahead of him because the dog's weight made the ice flex near the hole. The dog, terrified but alive, kept sliding toward shore in short, desperate crawls. Noah followed, his arms shaking so hard his hands wouldn't close properly. About halfway back, the ice groaned again. A hairline crack zipped out from the hole like lightning. Noah froze. The crack stopped inches from his elbow. He didn't breathe until he'd moved again, slowly, spreading his weight, belly flat. His backpack snagged on the ice edge behind him, and for a second, he was stuck. Panic rising like a wave. He wriggled out of the straps. The backpack sank instantly, swallowing the last of his textbooks, his cheap folder, the only hoodie he liked. The lake claimed it like it was nothing. Noah didn't watch it go. He couldn't afford to. He reached the thicker ice near shore and finally got his knees under him. He pushed up and half stumbled, half crawled the last few feet until his fingers hit dead grass and mud. The dog made it first. It scrambled onto land, shook violently, then turned and ran in a tight circle, barking as if it couldn't believe it was out. Noah pulled himself up and immediately almost fell. His legs didn't feel like legs anymore. They felt like someone else's. He took one step and his soaked jeans froze against his skin in the wind. His teeth started chattering so hard his jaw hurt. A woman in a puffy coat ran toward him, ran halfway, then stopped short like she was afraid of getting too close to whatever he had on him. She held her phone in one hand. She didn't put it away. "Oh my God," she said, breathless. "Oh my God, you idiot." Noah blinked at her. He couldn't form words right away. His hands were clenched, but he couldn't feel his fingers. His wrists had red scrapes where the ice had cut him. Water dripped from his sleeves in a steady line. The varsity jacket kid came closer, grinning like this was a show. "Dude, that's insane," he said. "That's gonna blow up." Noah tried to focus past the blur of cold. The dog was a few yards away, crouched low, ears back, shaking. It kept glancing between Noah and the tree line like it was waiting for someone. A man by the truck shouted, "I called it in! Ambulance is on the way!" "Is it your dog?" Noah managed. His voice came out ragged. The man didn't answer. He just looked at the dog like it was a puzzle. The woman finally stepped forward and grabbed Noah's arm, but even that felt wrong. Too late, too careful. "Come on," she said. You need to warm up. You can't." Noah stumbled with her toward the path. Every step felt like walking through wet cement. His ears rang. The wind slapped him, and his wet hair began to stiffen. "Before we continue," the varsity jacket kid said loudly to his phone, turning to film Noah's face, "tell us in the comments where you are watching this from." Noah stared at him, not understanding at first. Then the words clicked into place, and his stomach dropped harder than the ice had. This wasn't just a rescue. It was content. "No filming," the woman snapped, but she didn't take the phone away. Nobody did. They just watched him like he was a headline walking. Another car pulled up fast, tires crunching snow. Two guys got out, one in a beanie, one in a hoodie, despite the cold. They jogged toward the lake, phones already up. "Is that the foster kid?" the beanie guy asked, like Noah wasn't standing there. Noah's face went hot and cold at once. He'd heard that tone before. The tone that meant he wasn't Noah. He was a category, a thing you could talk about. The dog barked sharply and ran a few steps toward the trees, then stopped and looked back again. Noah followed its gaze. For a second, he saw movement beyond the reeds, someone tall, heavy coat standing just inside the tree line. They weren't coming forward. They weren't panicking. They were just watching. Still. Like they'd been there longer than anyone else. Then, the figure stepped back and disappeared between the trunks. "Hey!" Noah tried to call out, but it came out as a cough. He shook violently. His vision narrowed. Sirens cut through the air, faint at first, then closer. The woman tightened her grip on Noah's arm, tugging him toward the road. The dog suddenly sprinted toward the trees, straight for where the figure had been. "Wait!" Noah tried to go after it, but his legs buckled. He caught himself on the woman's sleeve. "You can't chase a dog right now," she hissed, like that was the worst idea in the world. "You can't even stand." Noah watched the dog vanish into the brush. A split second later, a sharp whistle sounded from the trees, one note, clean and controlled. The dog answered with a bark that sounded different than panic. It sounded like recognition. Noah's heart hammered. The dog wasn't just some stray. The ambulance arrived with two EMTs who moved fast, professional. They wrapped Noah in a foil blanket that crackled as they worked. The foil trapped the cold against him at first, making him shiver harder. "You went in after the dog?" one EMT asked, checking Noah's pulse, eyes scanning the cuts on his wrists. Noah nodded, jaw clenched so hard his teeth clacked. "Any head injury?" the EMT asked. "No," Noah forced out. "Just cold." The EMT gave him a look like he'd seen kids like Noah before, kids who said just a lot because they didn't want to be a problem. Someone else asked, "Where's the dog?" Noah turned his head toward the trees. The dog was gone. The varsity jacket kid was still filming. "He saved a dog," he narrated, voice excited. "But the dog straight up ditched him. That's crazy." Noah tried to sit up. "Stop," he rasped. "Stop saying it like that." "Relax," the kid said, smiling. "You're going to be famous." The word famous felt poisonous. The EMT raised a hand, blocking the camera. "Back up," she said firmly. "Give him space." The sheriff's cruiser arrived before the ambulance even pulled away. That made Noah's stomach knot again, even through the shaking. Sheriff Dalton got out slow, like he owned the air. His uniform looked too clean for a man who claimed to be everywhere in town. He had that calm face adults used when they were about to turn something into paperwork. He walked up and glanced at Noah once, quick. Then his eyes went to the phones. "All right," Dalton said, voice loud enough for everyone. "Who saw what happened?" The varsity jacket kid lifted his phone higher. "I got it all," he said proudly. Dalton nodded like the kid had done something right. "Good, that'll help." Noah's throat tightened. "Help who?" he tried to say, but it came out thin. Dalton finally looked at Noah properly. His gaze swept Noah's wet clothes, the foil blanket, the scraped wrists. No sympathy, just assessment. "You're Noah Harlan, right?" Dalton asked. Noah swallowed. "Yeah." Dalton's eyes flicked toward the woman in the puffy coat. "Is he with you?" The woman shook her head quickly. "No, I stopped. He's in foster," the beanie guy said, like it was a fun fact. Dalton nodded once. "Right." One of the EMTs stepped in. "Sheriff, we need to transport him. Hypothermia risk." Dalton held up a hand, still looking at Noah. "You did a dangerous thing today, son." Noah wanted to snap back that the dog didn't care about danger, that the lake didn't give warnings, that waiting would have killed it. But his brain was fogging, cold crawling behind his eyes. Dalton leaned closer, lowering his voice just enough to feel private while still being performative. "You're lucky," Dalton said, "because this could have gone very differently. And I've got folks telling me you were out here for reasons other than saving a dog." Noah stared at him, trying to understand. "What?" Dalton's face didn't change. "We'll sort it out. But you need to know something." He nodded at the phones. This is already getting around. And when it gets around, people start talking. People start remembering things that may or may not be true. Noah's heart pounded harder. I heard it barking." Dalton straightened and spoke louder again. "We'll need a statement, and we'll need to know why you were near the lake. This area's posted. Trespassing is trespassing." The EMT's eyes narrowed. "Sheriff," Dalton ignored her, his gaze locked on Noah like a hook. "Your caseworker will want to hear about this. Foster placements don't like risk." Noah's breath hitched. The words landed like a threat because they were one. He pictured his foster mom's face when she saw the wet shoes on the porch. He pictured the way she'd already been tired of him. He pictured a new house, new rules, new strangers. All because he didn't let a dog drown. The varsity jacket kid zoomed in on Noah's face, whispering to his phone, "Bro, the sheriff is mad. This is insane." Noah tried to reach up to push the phone away, but his hand barely lifted. His fingers didn't work. Dalton turned to the kid. "Send me that video." The kid beamed. "Yeah, for sure." Noah's stomach flipped. Dalton looked back at Noah and said almost casually, "Also, we're going to need to talk about the dog." Noah blinked, confused through the cold. "What about it?" Dalton's mouth tightened in a line that wasn't quite a smile. "Whose dog it is, where it went, and why I'm hearing it didn't just end up out there." Noah stared at him. "I don't know. It ran into the trees." Dalton nodded slowly, like Noah had just confirmed something. Then he said, clear and sharp, so everyone could hear, "So you admit you had contact with it, and now it's missing." Noah's blood turned to ice all over again. "What?" "No, I saved it." Dalton raised his voice over him. "We'll handle it, but you're not leaving town until we sort this out." And Noah realized, in the middle of the foil blanket, with his clothes freezing stiff and strangers filming his face, that the rescue was already over. Yet somehow the trouble was just starting. because the sheriff was looking at him like a suspect, and the last thing Dalton said before Noah could answer was, "You'd better hope that dog turns up, Noah, because if it doesn't." The ambulance heater should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like someone thawing him out just enough to hurt. Noah lay on the gurney with the foil blanket stuck to his wet hoodie, watching the EMT's gloved hands check his fingers, his pulse, his pupils. Every time the siren changed pitch, his stomach jumped like he was still under the ice. Outside the rear windows, Sheriff Dalton's cruiser followed too close, headlights locked on the ambulance doors as if Noah might escape through the metal. "You're shivering hard," the EMT said. "Try to slow your breathing." Noah stared at his own hands. They were red and raw where the ice had cut him, and the skin around his knuckles looked like it belonged to a different person. He couldn't stop hearing Dalton's voice. "If it doesn't, what happens if the dog doesn't turn up?" Noah asked, and hated how small his voice sounded. The EMT exchanged a look with her partner. "Right now you focus on staying warm," she said, careful. "We'll deal with the rest after you're stable." Noah knew that tone too, the tone adults used when the rest was already rolling downhill and they didn't want him to see the rock coming. His phone buzzed in his pocket. The vibration felt wrong, too normal, too casual for what had just happened. He tried to move, but the strap of the blood pressure cuff tugged his arm back. "You have a phone?" the EMT asked. Noah nodded once. "Leave it for a minute," she said. "You need both hands still." The buzzing stopped, then started again. Then again. Rapid, like his phone was trying to crawl out of his pocket. Noah's throat tightened. He didn't need to see the screen to know what it was. Someone had posted the video. Someone had sent it. Someone had tagged someone. When they reached the small town ER, the whole building felt too bright. Harsh lights, hard floors, the smell of disinfectant that never covered what it was trying to cover. They rolled him past a waiting room TV already playing muted local news, and Noah saw himself for half a second, his soaked hair, his wide eyes, the foil blanket crinkling around his shoulders, frozen on a paused frame while a scrolling banner beneath it read something like, "Local teen goes through ice in dramatic rescue." He didn't even get time to hate it. The gurney turned the corner, and the image disappeared. A nurse took his name. Noah watched her pen hover when she got to his last name. "Harlan," she repeated. Not a question, a recognition. "Yeah," Noah said. Her eyes flicked to the intake form again, to the section that said Guardian. She didn't ask who. She just said, "We'll need a contact." "My foster mom," Noah said. "Martha Keene." The nurse nodded without looking up, already typing. He wasn't sure which part made him feel worse, that the nurse didn't hesitate, or that she didn't need to. They stripped off his wet clothes behind a curtain and wrapped him in heated blankets that actually helped. His skin prickled as warmth returned, but the ache under it didn't ease. It just changed shape. A doctor examined his wrists, asked about swallowing lake water, listened to his lungs. Noah answered like he was in trouble, because he couldn't separate help from consequences anymore. "You got lucky," the doctor said, the same words Dalton used, but in a different way. "Another few minutes in that water and you might not be talking." Noah stared at the ceiling tiles. "The dog, is it here?" The doctor's mouth tightened. "No dog came in with you." Noah swallowed. "It ran into the trees." The doctor didn't say anything. Silence was its own answer. The curtain shifted. A familiar voice cut through the hospital noise. "Noah?" Martha Keene stood at the opening, cheeks flushed like she'd driven too fast. Her hair was still set like she always did it, even in a crisis, tight and controlled. She looked at Noah, then at the nurse, then at the stack of wet clothing in a plastic bag. "What did you do?" she demanded, not loud but sharp enough to sting. Noah tried to sit up. "I saved a dog." Martha's eyes flashed. "You jumped into a lake." "The ice broke," Noah said. I wasn't trying to. You were trying to get attention," she snapped, and then immediately glanced around as if afraid someone had heard. Her voice dropped. "Do you know what this does? Do you know what this does to my license?" Noah felt something cold crawl up his spine, even though he was wrapped in heat. "I didn't do it for attention." Martha took a breath, forced calm into her face the way she always did when company was present. "Your caseworker is on her way," the sheriff called. "Said there are..." Concerns. Noah's chest tightened. Concerns about what? Martha didn't answer right away. She looked at the nurse again, like the nurse could make the conversation safer just by being there. Then she said, "They say the dog is missing." Noah stared at her. "It ran off. Someone whistled." "It followed them." Martha's lips pressed together. "Noah, stop making it worse." "I'm not making anything," Noah said, and his voice cracked on the last word. "It happened." Martha shook her head, not at him, at the entire situation like it was a mess on her carpet. "Do you know what people are saying?" Noah didn't want to, but his phone buzzed again, and this time the nurse handed it to him, maybe to keep him quiet. The screen was a storm. Group chats, unknown numbers, tags from classmates, a DM from someone he barely knew. "Bro, you're crazy." Another, "Hero." Another, "Foster kid steals dog, then saves it, LOL." Noah opened the link. The video had already been edited. It started with him stepping onto the ice, but the caption slapped across the top like a verdict. "Kid falls through ice for clout. Dog mysteriously disappears." The comments were worse. Some people called him brave, some called him stupid, some called him a liar. The word foster popped up again and again, used like a punchline, like an explanation for anything bad. He scrolled and saw a comment with 100 likes. "Sheriff Dalton says he's looking into it." He hadn't even given a statement. Noah's hand shook so hard the phone rattled. He set it down on the blanket like it burned. Martha leaned in, voice tight. "You need to stop looking at that." "I didn't do anything," Noah said. "You keep saying that," she replied, "but you were out there alone, and now the sheriff thinks—" Noah cut her off. "The sheriff thinks what?" Martha's eyes flicked away. That was his answer. The curtain shifted again. A woman stepped in like she belonged there, badge clipped to her bag, hair pulled back, face neutral in the way professionals learn to do. "Hi, Noah," she said. "I'm Dana Pritchard, your caseworker." Noah's stomach sank. Dana smiled like this was a normal check-in, like kids didn't hear the word caseworker and immediately brace for impact. "I heard you had quite a day," Martha jumped in. "I told him not to go near the lake. I told him about the signs. He doesn't listen." Noah snapped his eyes to Martha. "You never told me that." Martha's cheeks tightened. "Don't argue." Dana held up a hand gently. "Okay, let's slow down." She looked at Noah, voice soft. "Noah, can you tell me what happened? In your words. Start from when you first saw the dog." Noah swallowed. His mouth was dry. His whole body felt heavy. "I was walking home," he said. "I heard barking. I saw it on the ice. It was stuck. I went out. The ice broke. I pulled it out. It ran." Dana nodded, taking notes. "Did you know the dog?" "No." "Did anyone else touch the dog?" "No, not that I saw." Dana looked up. "Did you take the dog's collar off?" Noah blinked. "What? No." Martha's voice came out too fast. "Of course he didn't." Dana's eyes didn't leave Noah. "Did you put anything on the dog? A leash? A coat? Anything?" "No," Noah said. "I couldn't even. My hands were numb. I grabbed its collar and fur. That's it." Dana wrote something down, then asked quietly, "Noah, were you on the lake before today? Recently?" Noah stared at her. "No." Dana paused, then said, "Sheriff Dalton believes you may have been near the marina earlier this week." Noah's heart kicked. "I wasn't." Dana's pen hovered. "He says there was an incident, something missing, and you were seen." Noah's mouth went open. Nothing came out at first. "That's not true." Martha exhaled like she was trying not to panic. Dana's tone remained calm, but the words weren't. "Noah, you know how these things go. We need to take it seriously. We also need to think about your safety. If people are upset—" "I didn't do anything," Noah said, louder this time. The nurse outside the curtain glanced in. Dana softened her expression. "I know that's what you're saying, but the internet is loud. And when a story gets out, sometimes it becomes dangerous for the child." Noah heard the phrase dangerous for the child and knew exactly what came next. He'd heard it before. It was a door closing, polite and legal. "You're moving me," Noah said, voice flat. Dana hesitated, just long enough to confirm it. "We're discussing temporary placement while we sort things out." Martha's face shifted, relief first, then guilt buried under annoyance. "That might be best," she said quickly. "For everyone." Noah stared at her. "For everyone," he repeated, and his voice sounded like someone else's. Dana cleared her throat. Noah, this isn't punishment. Noah laughed once, a short, harsh sound. It always is. Dana's eyes flicked to the door as if she wished someone else could take over this part. We can't ignore what the sheriff is telling us, and we can't ignore that the dog is missing. Noah's phone buzzed again. Another notification, another tag, another comment. The story was running without him. He opened the link again, scrolled until he found the original uploader's handle. It was one of the varsity kids, the same kid who'd said, "Tell us in the comments where you are watching this from." His profile was already full of small-town content, pranks, fights, drama, anything that made people stare. Noah clicked on the newest post beneath the lake video. A still image. Noah in the foil blanket, hospital corridor behind him. Caption, "Sheriff says he's not leaving town. Y'all think he stole the dog?" Noah's stomach rolled. "That's from inside the hospital," he whispered. Martha leaned closer, squinting. "How did he—" Dana's face tightened. "That shouldn't be possible." Noah looked up. "Someone is feeding this." Donna's voice became professional again, controlled. "Okay, put the phone away. We'll handle the social media side." "No," Noah said. He surprised himself with the firmness. "You won't. You'll move me and say it's for my safety, and then the story will stick anyway." Dana's eyes narrowed slightly. "Noah," he cut in, words tumbling faster. "The dog followed someone. Someone whistled. The dog knew them. It wasn't a stray. That means it has an owner. So why is the sheriff acting like I'm responsible for where it went?" Martha's jaw clenched. "Because you were the one out there." Noah turned to her, eyes hot. "Because I was the one who didn't let it drown." Dana's phone rang. She stepped half outside the curtain to answer, voice low. Noah listened anyway because there wasn't anywhere else to put his attention. "Yes, I understand. He's stable. Yes, he's here. No, he hasn't given a formal statement, but..." Dana's eyes flicked back to Noah when she said the last word, like she'd realized she'd said too much. Then she went quiet for a moment, listening. Her face changed. Not a lot. Just a tightening around the mouth, the kind that meant the person on the other end had power. "Yes, Sheriff," she said, and the word hit Noah like a shove. "I understand." Noah's chest went tight. Dana listened again, nodded. Then, still looking at Noah, she said, "Yes. I'll keep him here until you arrive." Noah sat up so fast the blanket slid. "He's coming here?" Martha's eyes widened. Dana ended the call and stepped fully back inside the curtain. Her calm expression was back, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Noah," she said, "the sheriff is on his way to ask you questions." "I'm a minor," Noah snapped. I need someone." Dana nodded quickly. "Yes, we'll make sure it's appropriate." Appropriate wasn't safe. Appropriate was paperwork. Noah's mind raced through the scene at the lake again. The phones, the truck, the still figure in the trees, the clean whistle, the dog's recognition. Someone had been there. Someone had watched him go under and come up. And that meant someone had watched Dalton too. Noah grabbed his phone with numb fingers and started typing a message to the only person he could think of who might not be laughing at him right now, an older kid from school who rode a dirt bike and didn't talk much. Before he could hit send, Dana's hand covered the screen. "Noah," she said quietly, "don't contact anyone right now." Noah stared up at her. "Why not?" Dana held his gaze. Her voice dropped to a whisper that felt like a warning. "Because the sheriff just asked me if you've been talking to bikers." Noah's blood went cold again, fast as the lake, because he hadn't mentioned bikes to anyone, not once, and the last thing he saw before he could answer was Sheriff Dalton's reflection sliding across the shiny floor outside the curtain as he stopped right at the opening and said, "Let's have a chat." Sheriff Dalton didn't step into the curtain like a man walking into a hospital. He stepped in like he was entering a room he already owned. He nodded once at Dana, once at Martha, then looked straight at Noah as if the heated blankets and hospital wristband didn't exist. "You're coherent?" Dalton asked the EMT outside, not waiting for permission. "He's stable," the EMT said. "He's also a minor. This conversation needs..." Dalton lifted a hand, calm, practiced. "I'm not arresting anybody in a hospital. I'm asking questions." Dana's jaw tightened. "Sheriff, we should schedule this properly." Dalton's eyes flicked to her. "You said you'd keep him here until I arrived." Dana held his gaze a beat too long, then stepped slightly aside like she had to choose between being a shield and being a door. Dalton pulled a small notebook from his pocket, the kind that made everything feel official even when it wasn't. He didn't sit. He stayed standing over Noah, blocking the light like a shadow. "Tell me again," he said, "why you were at the lake." Noah swallowed. His throat still tasted like metal and cold water. "I was walking home. Dalton wrote something down." "From where?" "School." "Which way?" "The path by the reeds," Noah said, "because if you didn't answer details, adults filled them in for you." Dalton nodded, as if Noah had just confirmed a theory. "So you took the lakeside path?" "It's the shortest." Dalton's pen paused. "The shortest for what?" Noah stared at him. "For getting home." Dalton's eyes didn't change, but something in his face sharpened anyway. "You didn't stop anywhere before the lake?" "No." "Did you meet anyone?" "No." Dalton wrote again, slow. The scratching of pen on paper sounded too loud in the small space. "Then you saw a dog?" "Yes." Dalton leaned in a little. "Describe the dog." Noah hesitated. It had been black and tan, medium-sized, thick coat, strong build. "It looked like a shepherd mix." Dalton's pen stopped. "A shepherd mix," Noah nodded. Dalton's eyes moved to Noah's wrists. "You grabbed its collar." "Yes." "Did you read the tag?" Noah blinked. "No." Dalton stared at him like the wrong answer had weight. "You're telling me you risked your life for a dog and didn't even look at the tag?" Noah's face flushed hot under the blankets. "I was trying not to drown." Martha made a small sound, like she wanted Noah to shut up. Dana shifted her weight, ready to step in, then didn't. Dalton straightened, flipped one page in his notebook like he was changing subjects, but his tone stayed the same. "Now," he said, "let's talk about where the dog went." Noah's stomach tightened. It ran toward the trees. "Toward whose property?" Noah frowned. "I don't know." Dalton's pen scratched. "You heard a whistle." Noah's heart thumped once, hard. "Yes." Dalton looked up, eyes flat. "Who whistled?" Noah's mouth went dry. "I didn't see." "But you're sure you heard it?" "Yes." Dalton nodded like he'd been waiting for that. "And then the dog ran to that whistle." "Yes." Dalton tilted his head slightly, like the pieces were fitting together too neatly. "So someone was there." Noah stared at him. "I guess." Dalton's expression shifted just a fraction, satisfaction hidden under concern. "Noah, I need you to understand something. People in this town are already upset. That dog belongs to someone who may not appreciate you inserting yourself." "I didn't," Noah started. Dalton held up a hand again. "I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm trying to keep you safe." Donna's eyes narrowed. "Safe from what?" Dalton didn't look at her. "From people who take matters into their own hands." Noah's pulse spiked. "You think someone's coming after me?" Dalton finally met his eyes. "I think you're in the middle of something you don't understand." Noah couldn't tell if it was a warning or a threat. With Dalton, it could be both. The curtain moved slightly as someone walked past in the hallway. Noah's head turned automatically, looking for movement, looking for another phone held up like a weapon. Dalton watched Noah watch the hallway. "You nervous, son?" Dalton asked softly. Noah swallowed. "No." Dalton's mouth twitched. "Okay." He flipped his notebook closed, then opened it again, like he'd changed his mind. "One more thing," he said. Noah braced. Dalton's voice became casual, almost friendly. "You know anything about the marina lockers?" Noah's stomach dropped. "What?" Dalton kept the same tone, like they were discussing weather. "We had a report 2 days ago. Small theft. Nothing major. But there's a witness who says they saw you near the marina that afternoon." Noah's chest tightened so hard it hurt. "That's not true." Dalton nodded, still writing. "Where were you 2 days ago after school?" Noah tried to think. The days blurred when your life was just school, chores, and trying not to get kicked out of wherever you lived. "Home," he said. "I was home." Martha's voice cut in quickly. "He was. I had him cleaning the garage." Noah turned to her, shocked. She'd never defended him like that. Not once. Dalton's eyes flicked to Martha. "You're certain?" Martha's chin lifted. "Yes." Dalton's stare lingered on her face, measuring how much she'd risk for him. Then he looked back at Noah. Funny thing, Dalton said. Witness claims otherwise. Dana stepped in. Sheriff, if you're alleging involvement in another incident, you need legal representation present. Dalton finally looked at her, his patience thinning. Dana, I'm not charging him. I'm gathering information. Noah's voice came out sharp despite the shaking. Why are you talking about the marina? I almost died today. Dalton's gaze stayed locked. Because you keep showing up around trouble, Noah. The words hit like a slap. Noah felt something inside him flare, not rage exactly, more like refusal. I showed up to save a dog, Noah said. That's not trouble. That's me doing something you didn't do. For a moment the room went still. Even Martha stopped breathing. Dalton's eyes darkened. Then he smiled, small and cold, like Noah had just handed him something useful. Careful, Dalton murmured. That tone? That's the tone that gets kids moved. Dana's face tightened. Sheriff, Dalton turned away from Noah as if Noah had already become a file. Here's what's going to happen, he said to Dana, like she was an assistant. I want a formal statement tomorrow, at the station, with a guardian present. If the dog's owner comes forward, we'll handle it peacefully. Until then, I suggest you keep Noah close, out of school, out of town, out of sight. Noah's heart hammered. Out of school? I didn't do anything. Dalton looked at him again. You're not hearing me. This isn't about what you did. It's about what people think you did. He tucked the notebook away. If you remember anything else about that whistle, who it might have been, what direction exactly, call me. Then he stepped out of the curtain and left the air heavier behind him. Dana exhaled slowly, like she'd been holding her breath the whole time. Martha immediately turned on Noah. Why would you talk to him like that? She hissed. Do you want to be moved again? Do you want to be in some group home? Noah stared at her. He's trying to pin something on me. Martha threw her hands up. Everything is always someone else's fault with you. Dana held up a hand. Martha, stop. Noah's been through trauma. Noah cut in. Don't. Both women looked at him. Noah's voice was flat now. Don't talk about me like I'm not here. Dana's expression softened again, but it didn't fix anything. Noah, she said carefully, we need to reduce risk. No social media, no contacting people. Do you understand? Noah stared at his phone on the blanket. Notifications kept stacking up. His name was a headline now, a rumor, a problem. What about the dog? Noah asked. If you find the owner, he can say it ran to him. Dana hesitated. Sheriff Dalton says the owner hasn't come forward. Noah shook his head. That's a lie. Someone was there. The dog knew them. Donna's eyes darted toward the curtain like she was afraid the sheriff could hear through fabric. Even if that's true, it doesn't help if we can't prove it. Noah clenched his numb fingers. Then let me prove it. Martha barked a laugh. How? You're going to go back to the lake? Noah didn't answer, but his silence did. Dana's tone hardened slightly. Noah, you're not going anywhere near that lake. Not tonight, not tomorrow. The doctor came back, signed discharge papers, warned about hypothermia symptoms, told Noah to drink warm fluids, to rest. Rest felt impossible. They left the hospital under a sky that was already turning dark. Martha pulled Noah into the car and blasted heat like it could erase what happened. On the way home, they passed the lake road. Noah stared out the window, scanning the tree line. Nothing. No movement, no dog, no whistle. Martha parked, dragged Noah inside, shoved him into the shower, then into bed like she was trying to complete a checklist. No phone, she said, holding out her hand. Noah didn't move. Martha's eyes narrowed. Don't make this harder. Noah handed it over, because fighting would only feed the story that he was difficult. In his room, wrapped in dry clothes, he lay staring at the ceiling while the house settled into quiet. He listened to Martha pacing downstairs, making calls, using his name in that tense voice. He heard Dana on speaker at one point, something about temporary placement, something about school tomorrow, something about community tension. Noah stared at the dark and tried to slow his breathing the way the EMT said, but every time he closed his eyes, he felt the lake pulling at him again. He didn't sleep. Not really. When morning came, his body felt bruised from the inside out. His wrists were bandaged, his throat still burned. Martha handed him toast he couldn't eat and told him to keep his head down at school. "You go in, you go out," she said. "No drama." Noah nodded because nodding was easier than explaining that drama didn't need his permission. The bus ride was a blur of stares. People didn't even pretend they weren't looking. Some whispered, some smiled like he was famous, some stared like he was dangerous. When he got off at school, the cold air hit his lungs and made him cough. He walked toward the front entrance, eyes on the ground, trying to be invisible. Then he heard it. Not the high whine of a phone recording, not the chatter of students. A low, heavy sound. Engines, many of them, not revving, just present. A deep mechanical hum that made the pavement feel alive. Noah lifted his head. The entire curb in front of the school was lined with motorcycles, dozens stretching farther than he could count. Big frames, chrome dull under the winter sky. Riders standing beside them in heavy jackets and gloves, helmets under arms. They weren't shouting, they weren't laughing. They were waiting. Teachers stood at the doors like they didn't know whether to lock them. Students gathered in clusters, phones up again, filming from a distance. Noah's breath caught in his throat as one rider turned his head slowly and looked straight at him, like he'd been expecting Noah specifically, and the rider took a single step forward and asked, calm as if ordering coffee, "Are you the kid who pulled my dog out of that ice?" Noah stopped so suddenly that the kid behind him bumped his shoulder and muttered something, but Noah barely felt it. The rider who'd spoken wasn't tall in a way that looked athletic. He was tall in a way that looked heavy, like his body had learned to carry weight and never put it down. Gray threaded his beard. His face was cut with old scars that didn't look like accidents. One eyebrow sat a fraction higher than the other, giving him a permanent expression of quiet disbelief. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. "Are you the kid who pulled my dog out of that ice?" he asked again, loud enough for Noah to hear, soft enough to feel like a private question. Every phone around them lifted a little higher. Noah's mouth went dry. He glanced along the line of bikes. There were so many. Riders in dark jackets, patches half hidden under winter layers, boots planted wide on the pavement like they were bracing against wind that wasn't there. None of them were acting drunk or wild or angry. They were too controlled for that. Noah started, then his throat caught. He cleared it and tried again. "Yeah, I did," the rider nodded once, as if he'd expected exactly that answer. "Name?" he asked. "Noah," Noah said. Then, because he'd been trained by adults to always offer extra info before someone demanded it, he added, "Noah Harlan." A ripple moved through the line. Small shifts, exchanged looks, nothing dramatic. The rider's face didn't change, but Noah saw something flicker in his eyes at the last name. He stepped closer, not fast, deliberate. "I'm Reed," the man said. "That dog's name is Ranger." At the sound of the name, Noah felt a sudden pressure behind his eyes. He hadn't even known the dog's name, but it had been alive in his hands. It had been terrified and trusting at the same time, like it knew Noah didn't have time to hurt it. Reed looked past Noah toward the school doors where the principal stood stiffly with two teachers, all of them pretending they weren't scared. The principal cleared his throat and forced his voice loud. "Sir, you can't block the entrance. Students—" Reed turned his head slowly. "We're not blocking anything," he said. "We're parked legally." The principal's mouth opened, then shut, because even from this distance Noah could see the curb and the signs. They were parked in a straight line. They weren't on school property. They weren't doing anything that could get them removed without a fight. Reed looked back at Noah. "You okay?" he asked. The question hit Noah wrong because it wasn't the "are you okay" adults used when they wanted you to say fine so they could move on. It sounded like Reed genuinely wanted the answer. Noah hesitated. A laugh rose in his chest and died there. Yeah, he lied. Reed's eyes dropped to Noah's wrists, still wrapped in fresh bandages. "No," Reed said quietly. "You're not." Noah felt heat creep into his face. He hated being seen like that. Behind Reed, one of the riders shifted, angling his body slightly toward the street. Another scanned the crowd of students like he was counting exits. It wasn't threatening. It was protective. Noah's stomach tightened at the thought. Protective of who? Reed nodded toward the front steps. "Walk with me," he said. Noah didn't move. He heard Martha's voice in his head. No drama, he heard Dana's voice. Reduce risk. He heard Dalton's voice. You're not leaving town, he swallowed. I need to go inside. Reed's gaze held. You will, he said, after we talk. Noah glanced at the phones again. The varsity jacket kid was there, front and center, recording with a grin like he'd just won the lottery. Reed noticed Noah looking and without turning his head said, Put the phone down. The kid laughed. Bro, this is public. Reed finally turned. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't step closer. He just looked at the kid like the kid was a noise that didn't matter. The kid's smile thinned. His phone lowered an inch. Reed turned back to Noah. 2 minutes, he said. That's all. Noah forced his feet to move. He walked toward the curb where the bikes were lined up, each step feeling like he was walking into a story he didn't understand. Up close, the motorcycles were bigger than they'd looked from a distance. Some were spotless, some were scratched, worn, real. A few had small decals, military, unit numbers, memorial ribbons, not decoration. History. Reed stopped beside a bike with a worn leather saddle and a small metal tag bolted near the handlebar. Noah didn't know what the tag meant, but it looked like the kind of thing that mattered. Reed unzipped his jacket a little and pulled something from an inside pocket, a folded paper, sealed in a clear plastic sleeve, and a photo, an actual printed photo, not a phone screen. He held the photo out to Noah. It was the dog, Ranger, sitting on a porch next to Reed, both of them looking straight at the camera. The dog wore a collar with a thick strap and a small patch. Noah swallowed. That's him, Reed nodded. Service dog, he said. Not a pet that wandered off. Noah's brain tried to catch up. So, he ran to you? Reed's gaze sharpened. Did he? Noah blinked. I told people he ran toward the trees. I heard a whistle. He followed it. Reed's expression didn't change, but something in his posture tightened. What kind of whistle? He asked. Noah tried to remember through the cold and panic. One note, clean, like, not a random whistle, like a signal. Reed's eyes flicked left, right, scanning the school, the street, the people. Then he looked back at Noah. Who filmed you first? Reed asked. Noah froze. What? Reed repeated it, calm. Who filmed you first? Not who was there. Who started filming before anyone helped? Noah's stomach turned. He saw it again. The phones lifted like the rescue was entertainment, the way the kid's voice had shifted into performance. The varsity kid, Noah said and nodded toward the group. Him and some adults. Reed's jaw tightened slightly. Noted. Noah didn't understand why that mattered, but Reed asked it like it was the most important detail in the entire incident. Reed slid the plastic sleeve and photo back into his jacket. You didn't take Ranger, Reed said. It wasn't a question. Noah's eyes widened. No, Reed nodded once. Good. Noah's voice came out rough. The sheriff thinks I did. That was the first time Reed's expression actually changed. Not anger, something colder, recognition. Dalton, Reed said, like tasting the name. Noah's throat tightened. He told my caseworker I talked to bikers. I didn't. I didn't even know you existed. Reed's eyes stayed on Noah for a beat too long, like he was looking past the words into the fear underneath them. Listen to me, Reed said quietly. I don't know you. You don't know me. But I know one thing. Ranger doesn't run to strangers, not when he's scared, not after being in freezing water. Noah's heart thumped. He ran to the whistle. Reed nodded. Which means someone he recognizes was there. Noah swallowed hard. I saw someone in the trees. They didn't come out. Reed's gaze flicked toward the direction of the lake road, like he could see through buildings and streets to the reeds and the ice. Did you see their face? Reed asked. No, Noah admitted. Just a coat, tall. They stepped back and disappeared. Reed inhaled slowly through his nose. Okay. Noah felt a flicker of hope. So you can tell the sheriff. You can tell everyone the dog is yours and it ran to you. Reed didn't answer immediately. That silence was worse than shouting. Noah's hope faltered. It ran to you, right? Reed's eyes stayed steady. Ranger ran, he said. That's all I'm going to say out here. Noah's chest tightened. Why? Reed leaned in slightly, just enough that Noah could smell cold air and leather and something metallic, like the inside of a garage. Because, Reed murmured, someone wanted my dog on that ice. Noah stared at him confused. What do you mean? Reed's gaze flicked to the phones again, then back to Noah. You didn't notice what was missing, did you? Noah's mouth went dry. Missing? Reed's voice was low now. Ranger's collar has a tag and a patch. When you grabbed him, when you pulled him, did you feel the patch? Noah tried to picture it. His hands had been numb. He'd grabbed fur, collar, anything he could hold. He swallowed. I don't know. Reed's jaw tightened. Because when I got him back, he said, that patch was gone. Noah felt his stomach drop. Gone? Reed nodded once. Cut clean, not ripped, not lost in the water. Noah stared at him, brain scrambling. So someone, Reed didn't let him finish. Someone was close enough to touch him before you ever stepped on that ice, Reed said. And now Dalton is already talking like you're responsible. Noah's hands curled into fists under his sleeves. He's trying to blame me. Reed's eyes narrowed slightly. He's trying to bury something, he said. Noah's pulse hammered. What? Reed looked toward the school doors again. The principal was talking into his phone now, face pale. A teacher kept glancing between Reed's line of bikes and Noah like he couldn't decide who to protect. Reed's voice dropped even lower. I didn't bring my people here to scare kids, he said. I brought them here because Dalton likes to isolate a target, and you're an easy target. Noah's throat tightened. I don't want trouble. Reed's gaze held. Too late, he said. You already have it. Noah's breath hitched. Then what do I do? Reed took a step closer, the space between them suddenly tight with pressure. You go to class, Reed said. You do nothing stupid. You don't talk to Dalton alone. You don't sign anything. You don't let anyone move you without an attorney present. Noah stared at him. An attorney? Reed nodded. One's already on the way. Noah's eyes widened. For me? Reed's face stayed hard, but his voice softened by a fraction. For the truth, he said. If that protects you, good. Noah's mouth went dry. Why would you do that? Reed didn't answer right away. He looked past Noah toward the street. Noah followed his gaze. A patrol car had just pulled up at the far end of the curb. Not Dalton's cruiser, another unit, lights off, creeping slow. The officer inside wasn't getting out. He was watching the bikes, watching Reed. Reed's expression didn't change, but his voice went razor flat. Because, Reed said, I saw what happened on that ice. Noah's heart slammed. You were there? Reed's eyes stayed on the patrol car. I was close enough, he said. Close enough to see who started filming before anyone moved. Close enough to see Dalton arrive and decide what story he wanted. Noah's breath caught. Then you can tell them. You can... Reed cut him off, finally turning back to Noah, gaze intense. I can, he said, and I will. But not the way Dalton wants. Noah swallowed. What way does he want? Reed leaned in, voice barely above the hum of distant engines and teenage whispers. He wants you to panic, Reed said. He wants you to run. He wants you to do one thing he can point to and say, see? Trouble. Noah's chest felt tight. I'm not going to run. Reed nodded once. Good. Then Reed glanced toward the school doors again and said louder now for everyone to hear, Noah, I'm not leaving until I know you're safe inside. Every phone lifted again. And from the patrol car, the radio crackled, audible even from this distance, a voice saying something Noah couldn't fully catch except one word that punched through clear as a bell. Dalton. Reed's eyes narrowed. Noah's stomach sank. Because if Dalton was coming back, coming here, right now, with all these bikes lined up outside a school and a story already on fire online, then whatever happened next wouldn't be quiet. And the last thing Noah saw before the front doors swung open was the principal stepping out, hands raised like surrender, while Sheriff Dalton's cruiser turned the corner into the school lot, and Dalton got out smiling like he'd been waiting for this moment his whole life. Dalton didn't roll in with sirens. He didn't need them. His cruiser eased into the school lot like a predator that knew the fences were decorative. The moment he stepped out, the noise around the entrance changed. Students stopped laughing. Teachers stopped pretending this was just a traffic issue. Even the riders shifted subtly, boots adjusting on pavement, bodies angling, hands settling near jacket zippers and belt lines without ever looking aggressive. Dalton smiled anyway. It was the same smile he'd used in the hospital curtain, friendly on the surface, sharp underneath, like he was enjoying how many people were watching. Morning, Dalton called out, voice loud and calm, carrying across the curb. He looked at the line of bikes, then at Reed, then at Noah. This is quite the scene. Reed didn't move. We're parked legally, he said, like he'd said before. Dalton nodded, as if that didn't matter. Sure, but a school isn't the place for a demonstration. This isn't a demonstration, Reed replied. It's a line. Dalton's eyes flicked to Noah again. A line for what? Reed's voice was flat. For accountability. A few students gasped like they'd heard a swear word. Dalton kept smiling. Accountability. That's a big word. He stepped toward the curb, stopping just short of the boundary that would make this a trespass on school property. He looked past Noah to the principal, who still had his hands raised like he was negotiating a hostage crisis. Mr. Keating, Dalton said. You all right? The principal nodded too fast. Yes, Sheriff, we're trying to keep everything calm. Dalton's gaze returned to Noah. Good, because I'm here for that too. Noah's chest tightened. He felt Reed shift half a step closer, not blocking him, just there. Dalton noticed it. His eyes narrowed a fraction, then smoothed out again. Noah, Dalton said, like they were old friends. How are those wrists? Noah didn't answer. If he answered, Dalton would own the moment. Dalton clicked his tongue softly. Silent treatment. Okay? He angled his head toward Dana's warning and Noah's memory. Don't talk to Dalton alone. But here was Dalton, on the curb in front of 100 phones, making sure Noah was alone anyway, because being surrounded didn't mean being protected. It meant being exposed. Dalton turned his attention fully to Reed. You're Reed Mercer, he said, like he already knew the answer. Reed's expression didn't change. And you're Dalton. Dalton chuckled. We've met. Reed's voice stayed calm. We've been in the same rooms, different sides of them. The air tightened. Dalton's smile held. I'm not here to argue about history. He lifted his hand slightly, palms out, a show for cameras. I'm here because there's an ongoing investigation, and I'm concerned your presence might influence a minor statement. Reed's gaze was steady. His statement shouldn't need influence if it's the truth. Dalton's eyes flicked to Noah again. Truth is funny, he said, especially when it's trending. Students murmured. Phones in the air shifted. Dalton took 2 slow steps along the curb, as if he was inspecting the bikes like they were property lines. He stopped beside Reed's motorcycle, glanced at the worn saddle, the metal tag. His eyes lingered on the small military decals. Ranger, Dalton said suddenly, looking back at Reed. That's the dog's name, right? Noah felt his stomach drop. Dalton hadn't heard that from him, not in the hospital, not on the lake, not from Dana. He'd heard it somewhere else. Reed didn't blink. Yes, Dalton nodded as if impressed. Beautiful animal. Then he looked directly at Noah. Funny thing, Noah, I asked around last night. Animal control didn't log any dog matching that description. Noah's mouth went dry. He ran off. Dalton raised his eyebrows. Sure, but a dog goes through ice, gets dragged out, and then vanishes. That's not common. Reed's voice cut in, calm but heavy. You know what else isn't common? A sheriff building a case against a child in public? Dalton's smile tightened. Reed, you want to be helpful? Bring your dog in. Confirm it's yours. Put this to bed. Noah's heart thudded. Yes, that's what Noah wanted. Just say it. End it. Reed didn't move. Dalton's gaze sharpened. Unless, Dalton said, still smiling, there's a reason you won't. The silence that followed was not empty. It was loaded. Even the students seemed to feel it. Reed spoke slowly. I'm not playing your game. Dalton sighed like a disappointed teacher. Okay. He turned slightly, projecting his voice to the crowd. Everyone, this is exactly why I'm concerned. Emotions are high, rumors are high, and kids, he nodded at Noah without looking kind, kids make decisions when adults pressure them. Noah felt heat surge in his face. Dalton was painting him as weak and unstable, a foster kid who could be pushed into anything, a kid who needed to be managed. Dalton's eyes finally met Noah's. Noah, he said gently, I need you to come with me for a minute. Noah's throat tightened. Where? Inside, Dalton said, nodding toward the entrance. Principal's office, quiet, no cameras. Just a few questions, Reed's voice cut through. No. Dalton's smile didn't vanish, but it thinned. This isn't your decision. Reed's gaze stayed on Dalton. He's a minor. He doesn't talk to you without representation, and he doesn't go anywhere alone. Dalton's eyes flicked to the principal, then to the teachers, then to the kids filming. He was calculating. Not what was right, what would play. Dalton spread his hands again, louder. You hear that? That's a biker telling a school what a child can do. A few students snickered nervously. Reed didn't rise to it. That's an adult telling another adult not to interrogate a kid in public. Dalton's jaw tightened. Reed, don't make me call state police to clear this curb. Reed's voice stayed calm. Call whoever you want. They'll ask why you're escalating at a school. Dalton's eyes narrowed, then softened again, like he was switching masks. Fine, Dalton said. Noah, you can stay right there. Answer one question for me, in front of everyone. He turned slightly so every phone could catch Noah's face. Did you remove anything from Ranger's collar? Noah felt the question hit like a trap snapping shut. He glanced at Reed, and for the first time Reed's control showed a crack. Not fear, not anger, but urgency. Noah swallowed. No. Dalton nodded slowly. No. He let the word hang. You're sure? Yes? Dalton tilted his head. Because Reed here is claiming the dog's patch is missing. Noah's stomach dropped. Dalton had said it on purpose, loud enough for everyone. A wave of murmurs rolled through the students. Patch? Missing? Phones moved like fish turning in a school. Dalton's voice stayed smooth. Now maybe that patch came off in the water. Maybe it didn't. But what I do know is you were the last known person to have hands on that dog before it disappeared. That's not true, Noah said, and his voice came out sharper than he meant. Someone whistled. The dog ran to them. Dalton's eyes lit up. There it was. The thing Dalton wanted. A new claim, a new thread he could pull until it snapped. Someone, Dalton repeated, savoring it. Who? I didn't see them. Dalton nodded slowly. Convenient. Reed's voice cut in, low. You just did it again. Dalton turned to him. Did what? You isolated him, Reed said. You baited him into saying something you can twist. Dalton's smile returned like a blade. Or, he said, he just admitted there was an accomplice. Noah's chest tightened. No? Dalton lifted a hand. Hold on. He looked at the principal. Mr. Keating, do you have camera footage from the front of the school? The street? Anything that might show people leaving the lake area yesterday? The principal blinked. We have security cameras, yes. Dalton nodded. Good, I'll need that. Reed's eyes narrowed. You're fishing. Dalton's voice stayed pleasant. I'm investigating. Then Dalton's radio crackled. He glanced down at it, listened for a beat, and the smile on his face changed shape. Not wider, tighter, like he'd just gotten a message he'd been waiting for. He keyed the mic, voice low. Say that again. Noah couldn't hear the reply, but he saw Dalton's eyes flick briefly toward Noah, then toward Reed, then toward the line of bikes. Dalton clicked the radio off. Well, he said softly, almost to himself, that's interesting. Reed's posture tightened. What is? Dalton looked at Reed, and for the first time his tone dropped the friendly mask. Animal Control just called me, Dalton said. They got an anonymous tip late last night. Somebody claims they saw your dog, Ranger, near the marina. Noah's blood went cold. Dalton's eyes never left Noah as he said the next part. Same marina where we had a theft report. Same marina where a witness put Noah Harlan 2 days ago. Noah's heart slammed. That's not. Dalton raised his voice over him for the crowd. So here's my question, Noah. He stepped closer, still not crossing onto school property, but close enough to feel like he was. Why would your story about a whistle and a stranger line up with a tip that drags you right back to the marina? Noah's mouth went dry. His brain raced. He hadn't been at the marina. He hadn't touched any patch. He hadn't done anything but pull a dog out of ice, but Dalton was turning it into a pattern, and patterns were what got foster kids moved. Patterns were what got them believed about nothing. Reed's voice was low and deadly calm. You're lying, Dalton smiled. Prove it. Reed's hand went to his jacket pocket, not fast, not threatening, just deliberate. Dalton's deputies in the lot shifted instantly. Their hands moved too. The tension snapped tight enough to cut, Reed didn't pull a weapon. He pulled out his phone. He held it up, screen facing Dalton. "I can prove it," Reed said. Dalton's smile faltered for the first time. "What's that?" Reed's gaze stayed steady. "A video," he said. "Not the one your little influencers posted. Mine." Noah's breath caught. Reed's thumb hovered over the screen, then paused, and he looked at Noah as if making a decision that couldn't be undone. "Last chance," Reed said quietly, not to Dalton, to Noah. "You want the truth out loud right now? Because once I play this, it doesn't stop." Noah's lungs locked. The crowd pressed in closer, phones rising higher. Dalton's face hardened. "Reed," he warned. Reed ignored him, eyes on Noah. And Noah realized that whatever was on that video wasn't just him in the water. It was the missing piece, the thing that explained why Dalton had been so sure, so fast. Noah opened his mouth to answer, and at that exact moment, a kid's voice shouted from the steps, loud and excited, "Yo, it's trending again!" Every head snapped toward the school doors as someone pushed through the crowd holding up their phone and yelling, "They just posted another angle. Someone cut the dog's collar." Noah's stomach dropped through the pavement because the clip on the kid's screen wasn't from yesterday. It was from inside the school. And the last thing Noah saw before the crowd surged was Dalton looking straight at him, eyes cold, and saying, "Now you're in real trouble." The crowd surged like someone had pushed a single button and turned every kid in front of the school into one animal. Phones lifted, shoulders bumped. Someone laughed too loud. Someone else cursed. The principal shouted, but his voice got swallowed immediately. Noah couldn't see the screen anymore, just the glow of it bobbing above heads while the kid who'd yelled about another angle shoved through, desperate to be the center of it. "They posted it," the kid kept saying, breathless. "Look, look, right there. Someone cuts the collar." Dalton didn't move fast. He didn't have to. He watched the chaos build and let it do what it always did. Make people stupid, make people loud, make people choose a story before facts. Then he stepped into the moment. "Everybody back up," Dalton said, voice steady, amplified by the authority in it. "Right now." A few students actually obeyed, not because they respected him, but because they could hear the threat beneath his calm. Dalton's eyes stayed on Noah. Noah tried to breathe, but his chest was tight, like the lake had reached inside him and grabbed. The words "cut the collar" made his stomach twist. He hadn't cut anything. His hands had been numb. His wrists were bandaged. But truth didn't matter when a video existed. Reed's hand came down on Noah's shoulder, firm and grounding. "Don't talk," Reed murmured. "Not to them. Not to anybody." Noah nodded once, barely. Dalton turned slightly toward the kid holding the phone. "Show me." The kid practically bounced with excitement and pushed the screen forward. Dalton took it with 2 fingers like it might contaminate him, then watched. Noah watched Dalton's face instead of the screen. Dalton's eyes narrowed. His mouth tightened, then relaxed, then tightened again. He wasn't shocked. He was evaluating, like he was seeing how useful it could be. Dalton looked up at the kid. "Where'd you get this?" "It's on TikTok," the kid said. "Same account. They dropped it like 5 minutes ago." Dalton's gaze snapped back to Noah. "Same account that posted yesterday's video," he said, loud enough for the writers and the principal and half the kids to hear. "Interesting." Noah felt a cold wave roll through him. The account had gotten a hospital hallway still. Now it had another angle of the lake rescue and a collar being cut. Someone was feeding this, or staging it. Reed's voice was low. "That clip doesn't prove what you're saying it proves." Dalton lifted his chin. "Sure it does. It shows a kid on the ice and a hand at the collar." He tapped the screen once. "That patch was cut." Noah's throat burned. "That's not me," he said before he could stop himself. Reed's grip tightened slightly as if to remind him. "Don't." Dalton's smile returned like a hook. "Not you," he repeated. "So someone else was out there, right? Someone close enough to cut the collar." Noah stared at him, realizing how Dalton was going to play it. If it wasn't Noah, then Noah had to know who. And if Noah didn't know who, then Noah was lying. Either way, Noah lost. Dalton turned toward the principal. "Lock the doors," he said casually. "Nobody leaves until we sort this out." The principal's face went white. "Sheriff, I can't." Dalton didn't look at him. "You can. Do it." Teachers shifted, uncertain. Students started murmuring louder. Reed's voice cut through. "You're not locking down a school over a TikTok." Dalton finally looked at him. "It's not over TikTok, it's over evidence." His eyes flicked to Noah again. "And an ongoing investigation." Noah felt heat rise behind his eyes. "I didn't do anything." Dalton nodded like he'd heard it 1,000 times. "That's what you said in the hospital. That's what kids always say." He took a step toward Reed, eyes hard. "Play your video, Reed. Let's see how noble you are." Reed didn't move. His thumb hovered over his own phone screen, but he didn't play anything. Dalton's mouth curled. "What's wrong? Not so eager now?" Reed's voice was flat. "I'm not handing you my leverage." Dalton's eyes narrowed. "Leverage, there it is." The riders behind Reed shifted again, disciplined and quiet, forming a subtle half-arc without touching a single student. They weren't pushing in, they were guarding space. Noah's space. Noah's breathing hitched when he realized it. He'd never had adults do that, not even once. Dalton saw it too. "Let's do this another way," Dalton said, turning his body so he could address both the bikes and the school crowd. "Noah Harlan, I'm ordering you to come with me to the station after school today." Noah's stomach dropped. "I'm not going anywhere with you." Dalton's smile vanished. "That wasn't a request." Reed's voice came low and controlled. "He's not going anywhere without counsel." Dalton snapped his gaze to Reed. "You're not his guardian." Reed's jaw tightened. "No, but your caseworker is, and she knows what you're doing." Dalton's eyes flicked briefly, fast toward the school doors, like he'd expected Dana to appear already. Then, Dalton did something Noah didn't expect. He stepped closer, not to Noah, but to the kids filming, and he lifted his voice into that "for the community" tone. "Listen up," Dalton announced. "If you share misinformation, you interfere with an investigation. If you intimidate witnesses, you commit a crime. Do you understand?" Kids quieted, not because they cared about interfering, but because the word crime made it real. Dalton pointed at the phone in his hand, the viral new angle phone. "This device is evidence now." The kid's face collapsed. "What?" "No." Dalton held it out to a deputy who'd approached silently. "Bag it," the kid sputtered. "You can't—" "My mom—" Dalton didn't even glance at him. "Tell your mom to stop raising kids who profit off panic." A few students laughed nervously. The kid looked like he might cry. Noah's pulse hammered. Dalton was performing control for the crowd while tightening the net around Noah. Reed leaned toward Noah, voice barely audible. "We're leaving this curb," he said. "You're going inside. Now." Noah swallowed. "They're locking the doors." Reed's eyes narrowed. "They can try." Reed raised his voice slightly, not shouting, projecting. "Principal Keating," he called. The principal flinched as if he'd been called to the front of class. Reed didn't threaten. He didn't posture. He spoke like an adult speaking to another adult. "Your job is to keep kids safe," Reed said. "A kid nearly died yesterday. This isn't a spectacle. If you lock doors on your students because a sheriff wants a story, you'll answer for it. You understand me?" The principal looked at Dalton. Dalton's face stayed neutral, but his eyes were warning. "Choose carefully." The principal swallowed and said weak, "We're not locking down. We're just going to keep everyone calm." Dalton's jaw flexed. Reed nodded once. "Good." Noah started moving toward the entrance, slow, because his legs still felt wrong. Reed stayed beside him like a wall. Dalton called after them. "Noah, don't make this worse." Noah didn't turn. Behind him, he heard Dalton's voice shift again, quieter, aimed at the bikes. "This is your play, Reed. Surround a school and act like you're the good guys." Reed didn't answer. Noah reached the steps. A teacher opened the door quickly and waved him inside like she wanted him out of sight before the crowd ate him alive. The warmth of the hallway hit Noah's lungs and made him cough hard. The door shut behind him, muffling the engine hum outside. But it didn't erase the feeling of eyes on him. It just swapped one set of eyes for another. Every kid in the hallway had a phone. Every kid's screen had his face. Someone whispered, "That's him." Someone else said, "He stole the dog." Another voice, "Nah, he's a hero." A girl he'd never spoken to leaned in and said, "My dad says foster kids always end up like this." Noah's vision tunneled. He kept walking, 1 foot, then the other. Like he'd done on the ice, like he'd done through every house he'd been moved into. At his locker, his hands shook too much to work the combination. He tried again and again until a kid beside him snorted. "Need help?" the kid asked, not kind. Noah forced his fingers to turn the dial. A hand suddenly appeared over his shoulder, steady, adult, and close. The locker clicked open. Noah jerked back. It was Mr. Haskins, the shop teacher. Big arms, tired face, the kind of man who usually spoke in grunts and didn't care about drama. "Your hands are still cold," Haskins said quietly. "Stop fighting it." Noah stared at him. "Thanks." Haskins didn't smile. He glanced down the hall, then leaned in just enough that Noah could hear him over the chatter. "You're being watched," Haskins murmured. Noah's throat tightened. "I know." Haskins shook his head once. "Not like this." Before Noah could ask what he meant, Haskins stepped away, as if he'd never been there. Noah shoved his books into his backpack, then froze. His backpack wasn't his. His cheap black backpack had sunk in the lake. He'd been using a spare Martha gave him, an old one with a stiff zipper. But the bag in his locker was black, worn, and familiar. Noah's hands went cold again as he pulled it out. It was his original backpack, the one that sank. The fabric was damp at the seams. A corner was crusted with frozen mud. The zipper pull was bent the same way it always had been, from where Noah used to yank it too hard. Noah's heart pounded. He unzipped it with shaking fingers. Inside were his textbooks, warped slightly from moisture, his folder swollen at the edges, his hoodie, still damp, and tucked on top, like someone had placed it there gently, was a small rectangular patch. A service dog patch, clean edges, cut clean. Noah's breath caught so hard it hurt. He looked around wildly. Kids were still filming, still whispering, but nobody was close enough to have just put it there, unless they'd done it earlier, before he arrived. A shadow fell across the locker door. Noah turned. Dana Pritchard stood there, caseworker badge visible, face tight with panic disguised as calm. "Noah," she said quietly, "why is Sheriff Dalton telling me you were caught with evidence in your locker?" Noah stared at her, unable to speak. Dana's eyes flicked down to the patch in his hand, her face drained of color. And before Noah could explain, before he could even breathe, the school intercom crackled to life with the principal's voice, shaking. "Security to the main office. Sheriff Dalton is requesting Noah Harlan immediately." Noah's grip tightened around the patch until the hard edges bit his skin. Because someone had just planted it, and Dalton was already coming to collect him. Dana's hand closed gently around Noah's wrist, gentle enough to look caring, firm enough to stop him from bolting. "Don't," she murmured, eyes darting toward the hallway cameras. "Not here." Noah's throat felt packed with cotton. The service dog patch sat in his palm like a hot coal. "I didn't," he started. "I know," Dana cut in, too fast. Then she corrected herself, slower, like she was putting her professional mask back on. "I don't know. But I believe you didn't." That was the closest thing to comfort Noah had heard all day, and it still didn't feel safe. The intercom crackled again. The principal's voice sounded worse, like he'd been forced to say it twice. "Security to the main office. Sheriff Dalton is requesting Noah Harlan immediately." Heads turned down the hallway. A wave of phones rose as if on cue. Kids started whispering louder, already tasting the next update. Noah clenched the patch, then shoved it back into the backpack like hiding it could undo what it meant. Dana's eyes snapped to the bag. "Noah, no." "What?" Noah hissed. "That's evidence," she said. "If you move it, they'll say you tampered." "I didn't put it there," Noah said, voice shaking. "So why does it matter?" Dana's face tightened. "Because it's not about what's true. It's about what they can write down." Noah stared at her. "So what do I do? Just walk into his office and let him—" Dana stepped closer, lowering her voice to a whisper that sounded like it hurt. "You do not go anywhere with Dalton alone. You do not answer questions without counsel. You do not sign anything. Do you understand me?" Noah nodded, but his pulse was too loud. Dana slid her phone out and typed fast, thumbs moving like she was trying to outrun a wave. Then she lifted the phone to her ear and turned slightly away, speaking low. "Yes, now. At the school. He's here. He's requesting Noah. There's evidence planted. I need you here immediately." Noah caught only fragments, but one phrase landed clean. Planted. Dana ended the call and looked at Noah. My supervisor is sending a county attorney, not Dalton's people. Noah swallowed. How long? Dana's eyes flicked to the cameras again. Not fast enough for Dalton, so we stall. We, Noah repeated. Donna took a breath. Yes, she said, like she was committing to a decision. We. She turned to the nearest teacher. Mr. Haskins was still lingering by the lockers, pretending he wasn't. Donna waved him over with a sharp motion. Haskins approached, face unreadable. What's going on? Donna kept her voice calm, public safe. Sheriff Dalton is requesting Noah in the office. Haskins' eyes flicked to Noah's bandaged wrists, then to Dana's badge. And, Dana lowered her voice, we're not doing that. Not alone, not without counsel. We need a secure room until legal arrives. Haskins didn't hesitate. Shop wing, he said, back room. Dana nodded once. Do it. Noah blinked. What? Haskins stepped in close. Grab your bag, he muttered. Keep it zipped. Don't touch anything inside. Follow me. Noah's hands shook as he zipped the backpack closed. The patch felt like it was burning through the fabric. They moved fast. Dana walking like she owned the hallway. Haskins like he didn't care about anyone's opinion. Noah stuck between them, trying not to look like he was being escorted. It didn't work. Kids saw. Kids filmed anyway. Whispers followed them like wind. Where are they taking him? They found something in his locker. My cousin said he stole a service dog. Noah kept his eyes forward and focused on Haskins' boots hitting the floor. They turned down the shop wing, quieter, emptier, smelling faintly of oil and sawdust. The noise of the main hall faded, replaced by the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant clank of metal from a class in session. Haskins opened a door marked storage and waved them in. Inside was a small room lined with shelves of tools and boxes, a desk jammed into the corner, no windows, just a single camera dome in the hallway outside the door, not inside. Haskins shut the door and leaned his shoulder against it. Dana exhaled like she'd been holding her breath since the lake. Okay, she said. We wait. Noah stared at her. He's going to come looking. Dana nodded. Yes. Noah's voice cracked. He'll say I'm hiding because I'm guilty. Dana's jaw tightened. Let him. I'd rather he say you're hiding than have him railroad you into a statement. Noah swallowed. He can do that? Dana looked at him and her eyes finally showed what she'd been trying to hide. Fear, not for herself. For him. He can try, she said quietly. And he's good at it. Outside the door, footsteps approached, then stopped. A muffled voice. Dana? Dalton, Dana's posture stiffened. She didn't answer right away. The doorknob jiggled once. Dana, Dalton said again, louder, still calm. Open the door. Haskins didn't move. He kept his shoulder planted. Dana stepped closer to the door, voice controlled. Sheriff, Noah is not available for questioning without counsel present. A pause. Dalton's tone shifted, still calm, but colder. You're obstructing. Dana didn't flinch. I'm following policy. He's a minor in care. Another pause. Then Dalton spoke like he was smiling. Policy, he said. Funny word. You know what else is policy? Mandatory reporting. If I believe a child is involved in a crime, I can place a protective hold. Noah's stomach dropped. He looked at Dana, panic rising. Dana's voice tightened. Protective holds require justification and documentation. Dalton chuckled softly. Good thing you've got evidence in his locker then. Noah's chest tightened so hard it hurt. Dana's eyes flicked to Noah, a silent warning. Don't react. Don't give him anything. Haskins spoke for the first time, voice deep and flat. Sheriff, you don't get to bully your way into a storage room. Dalton went quiet for a beat. Then his voice returned, calmer than before, which was worse. Mr. Haskins, Dalton said, I'm going to remember you said that. Haskins didn't care. Write it down. Silence. Noah could almost hear Dalton thinking through the door. How do I win without making this look bad? Then Dalton spoke again, louder, meant to be heard by anyone in the hallway. Dana Pritchard, he announced, I'm requesting you bring Noah Harlan to the main office immediately. If you refuse, I will consider it non-compliance and take action. Dana's face stayed composed, but her fingers trembled slightly at her side. She took her phone out again and started recording audio, holding it low where Dalton wouldn't immediately notice. "Sheriff," Dana said clearly, "I'm denying that request until legal counsel arrives." A pause. Then Dalton's voice softened, syrupy. "Legal counsel? You mean bikers' lawyers?" Donna's eyes narrowed. "County counsel." Dalton laughed once, sharp. "Sure." Noah's breathing got shallow. He forced himself to count, 1, 2, 3, like the EMT said. A radio crackled outside. Dalton spoke into it, muffled now, words clipped. Then the footsteps moved away. Noah exhaled too fast, relief and dread mixing. "He's going to come back with someone," Noah whispered. Dana nodded. "Yes." Haskins looked at Noah. "You got anyone who'll show up for you?" he asked, blunt. Noah swallowed. "No." Dana's voice was soft but firm. "He does now." Noah stared at her. "Who?" Dana lifted her phone again. "The attorney, and—" she hesitated, then said it anyway. "Reed." Noah's chest tightened. "Reed's going to come inside?" Dana shook her head slightly. "Probably not, but his people will keep Dalton honest outside." Noah's mind raced. "What if Dalton arrests me anyway?" Dana held his gaze. "Then we make noise, real noise, not social media noise, court noise. Outside, more footsteps, heavier, multiple." Haskins shifted, readying himself. The doorknob jiggled again, harder this time. A new voice joined Dalton's, muffled but authoritative in a different way. Female, crisp. "This is Principal Keating," the voice said. "Dana, you need to come to the office, now. Sheriff Dalton is insisting." Dana took a breath, then spoke through the door, voice clear. "Principal Keating, I am with the child in care. He is not leaving this room without counsel. If you force this, I will file a complaint with the county and the state. Do you understand?" Silence on the other side. Then Dalton's voice again, too calm. "Dana, open the door. I don't want to do this the hard way." Noah's stomach twisted. "What hard way?" Dana didn't answer. She stared at the door like she could see through it. Then Haskins's phone buzzed. He glanced down, and his face tightened. He showed the screen to Dana, a message, short, no name attached. "He's got the dog." Noah's blood turned to ice, because if Dalton had Ranger, if Dalton had the dog, then the patch in Noah's locker wasn't just a frame. It was a warning. And on the other side of the door, Dalton spoke softly, almost kindly, like he was offering Noah a way out. "Open up," Dalton said, "and I'll make sure this doesn't ruin your life." The words on Haskins's screen didn't feel real until Noah read them twice. "He's got the dog." Noah's lungs locked. The storage room suddenly felt smaller, like the shelves were leaning in. If Dalton had Ranger, then everything else, the missing patch, the viral clip, the anonymous tip, the planted evidence, wasn't a messy rumor storm. It was a plan. Donna reached for Haskins' phone and read the message again, slower this time, as if speed could change the meaning. Her face went pale in a way Noah hadn't seen before. Not professional concern, not caseworker calm. Fear. "Who sent that?" Donna asked. Haskins shook his head. "Unknown number. Came in a minute ago." Donna's eyes snapped to Noah. "You haven't told anyone we're in here, right?" Noah swallowed. "No, Martha took my phone." Donna looked at the zipped backpack on the floor like it was a live wire. "Okay." Outside the door, Dalton's voice floated back in, still soft, still offering. "Open up," Dalton said, "and I'll make sure this doesn't ruin your life." Noah's hands curled into fists. "He's lying." Dana didn't answer immediately, which was worse than agreeing. She took her phone out and texted fast, then held it close to her ear, listening. No one picked up. Haskins leaned closer to the door, listening. The hallway outside had gone quiet in a way that didn't happen in a school unless something was being staged. Dana lowered her voice. "He knows we're stalled. He's going to change tactics." Noah's throat burned. "What kind?" Dana looked at him. "The kind that forces you into the office without touching you." Noah stared. "How?" Dana didn't get to answer. A new sound cut through the hall, fast footsteps, then a sharp knock on the storage room door that wasn't Dalton's polite pressure. This knock was urgent, messy. Haskins peeled his shoulder off the door and cracked it an inch, keeping his body between the opening and Noah. A student's face appeared in the gap, wide-eyed, flushed. It was the varsity jacket kid, the same one who filmed the lake, the same one who'd narrated Noah's panic like a show. "Yo," he panted, "they're saying." Haskins shoved the door nearly shut again. "Get lost." "Wait, wait," the kid blurted, loud enough for the hall. "They're saying he stole the dog patch and hid it in his locker, like, that's what Dalton said." Dana's face tightened. "Dalton said it?" The kid nodded quickly, eager. "Yeah, like in the office. Teachers heard it. He's telling everybody it's evidence and you're hiding him because you're in on it." And the kid's voice dropped like he was sharing gossip. "He said the dog's owner is dangerous and might come here, so they're locking down the school." Noah felt cold spread through his chest. "He's doing a lockdown," Dana snapped. "They can't justify a lockdown over speculation." The kid's eyes flicked to Noah, then away. "They're doing it anyway. He said it's a safety thing." Noah's mouth went dry. Dalton had said those exact words before. Safety. Safety was his favorite weapon because it sounded like protection, while it did the opposite. Haskins glared at the kid. "Why are you here?" The kid swallowed and held up his phone. "Because someone DM'd me, the account. The one that posted the video. They told me to come to you. They said you'd listen to me if I brought proof." Dana's heart visibly jumped. "What proof?" The kid's thumb shook as he unlocked his phone and opened the message. "They sent me a clip, like a real clip." Haskins opened the door a fraction wider, just enough for Dana to see the screen without letting the kid in. Dana leaned in. Noah craned his neck, but Haskins's shoulder blocked most of it. He only saw a moving blur. Dark ice, a figure near the reeds, a gloved hand. Dana's breath caught. "Turn up the volume," she whispered. The kid did. A clean, single whistle sounded, the same whistle Noah remembered. Then, in the clip, the dog's head snapped toward the sound. A hand reached down, fast, fingers pinching at the collar. A blade flashed. The patch came off in one clean cut. Noah's stomach dropped through the floor. Then the figure stepped back, and for a split second the camera caught the side of a face, only a sliver, but it was enough. Dana froze. Haskins muttered, "That's," the kid whispered, almost impressed, "that's Sheriff Dalton." Noah's blood turned to ice. He lunged forward before Haskins could stop him, just enough to catch one frame clearly. The sharp jaw, the familiar posture, the same winter cap Dalton wore sometimes, pulled low. Even in grainy motion, Noah recognized the way Dalton moved, like the world was his. Noah's mouth went dry. "He was there," Noah whispered. Dana grabbed the kid's phone with both hands, careful, like it was fragile evidence that could shatter. "Send this to me, now. Do not post it." The kid blinked. "But the account said—" Dana's voice snapped, low and dangerous. "Now." The kid fumbled, then hit send. Dana's phone chimed. She watched it download, eyes locked. Noah's pulse hammered. If this was real, if this showed Dalton cutting the patch off Ranger's collar, then everything made sense. Dalton didn't just want to blame Noah. He wanted to control what the patch meant, where it went, who could prove it, and if Dalton had the dog, he had the missing piece physically. The patch was just the story. Dana looked up, face hardening into something Noah hadn't seen on her before. Determination. "This changes everything," she said. Haskins asked, "Who do we give it to?" Dana's jaw clenched. "Not Dalton," Noah whispered. "Reed." Dana nodded once. "Yes." She turned to the kid in the varsity jacket. "What's your name?" The kid blinked, thrown off by being treated like a human instead of a camera. Tyler." Dana stared him down. "Tyler, listen carefully. If you want to fix what you started, you're going to do exactly what I say. You're going to walk out of this hallway like nothing happened. You're going to go to the front entrance and tell the bikers," she didn't say Reed's name out loud, "that Dana Pritchard has proof. You will not show anyone else. You will not post. You will not talk." Tyler's eyes darted. Dalton will..." Dana leaned in. "Dalton is already lying about a foster kid to protect himself. You think he'll protect you?" Tyler swallowed hard. "Okay." Haskins opened the door wider and stepped out first, scanning. The hallway was emptier than it should be. Doors to classrooms were closed. A few teachers stood at intersections like sentries, radios in hand. Over the intercom, the principal's voice came on, shaky but reading from something, words that didn't sound like him. "Attention, We are initiating a temporary lockdown as a precaution. Students and staff remain in classrooms until further notice. Noah's stomach clenched. Lockdown meant Dalton could claim safety while he controlled every movement. It meant Noah couldn't leave. It meant anyone trying to reach Noah had to go through the office, through Dalton. Dana whispered, "He's forcing us." Noah's voice shook. "He's trapping me." Dana looked at him. "No. He's trapping himself." She took a step toward the door, then stopped and looked back at Noah. "You're going to do something hard," Dana said quietly. "You're going to walk into that office with me, on my terms, with this proof already sent outside, and you're going to say as little as possible. You're going to let Dalton talk. You're going to let him build his lie." Noah stared. "Why would we let him?" Donna's eyes were steady now. "Because people like Dalton can talk their way out of anything, unless you let them talk on record." Haskins nodded once, grim. "Get him to say it." Noah's heart pounded. "What if he takes me anyway?" Dana's voice dropped. "Then we make it impossible for him to pretend it was clean." Tyler stood there, shaking, phone in hand like it weighed 100 pounds. "Go," Dana told him. Tyler hesitated, then sprinted down the hall, disappearing around the corner toward the front doors. Donna took Noah's elbow. "Ready?" Noah's mouth went dry. His brain screamed to run, to hide, to disappear. But there was nowhere to disappear inside a locked-down school with cameras and a sheriff who already had a story written. He nodded once. They stepped into the hallway. At the far end, the main office doors were open. Dalton stood just inside, talking to the principal and a deputy, posture relaxed like he'd orchestrated the entire building into silence for fun. Then Dalton's eyes lifted. He saw Noah. He saw Dana beside him, and he smiled, wide, welcoming, like this was exactly what he wanted. "Good," Dalton said, loud enough for the teachers nearby to hear. "There he is." Dana's grip tightened on Noah's arm as they walked toward him, and Noah realized the most terrifying part wasn't that Dalton had framed him. It was that Dalton looked confident, like he still had one more move Noah hadn't seen yet. Because as Noah and Dana reached the office threshold, Dalton leaned toward the deputy and murmured something Noah couldn't hear. The deputy nodded once, then stepped away, toward the side exit door, toward the parking lot, toward the line of motorcycles. And Noah knew Dalton was about to turn the bikers into the threat, because if he could make the town fear them more than they doubted him, the video wouldn't matter. Dalton's smile never left his face as he said, "Dana, let's talk about why you've been hiding evidence." Dalton's smile stayed in place as if it had been glued on that morning. "Dana," he repeated, voice warm enough for the teachers hovering nearby to relax. "Let's talk about why you've been hiding evidence." Dana didn't flinch. She stepped forward just enough to put her body between Noah and Dalton without making it obvious. Her tone was even, professional. "I haven't hidden anything," she said. "Noah was in my care. I removed him from a chaotic hallway for his safety." Dalton nodded like he respected that. Then he glanced down at Noah's backpack. "And that bag?" Dalton asked. "The one that magically reappeared after sinking in a lake?" Noah's throat tightened. He felt every eye on the office threshold. Teachers, a secretary peeking from behind the counter, the deputy by the wall who kept his hands folded like a church usher. Donna answered first. "The bag was in his locker when he arrived. We don't know how." Dalton's eyebrows lifted. "We," he echoed. Interesting choice of word. Donna kept her face neutral. "I'm speaking as his caseworker." Dalton leaned slightly toward her, lowering his voice while still making sure the people closest could hear. "Dana, you and I both know how this works," Dalton said. "A kid with a history, a kid who takes risks, a missing service dog patch, now a lockdown because your biker friends are surrounding the building." Dana's jaw tightened. "They are not my friends." Dalton's gaze flicked past Dana, toward the office window that looked out to the front curb. You couldn't see the motorcycles from inside, but you could feel them in the building's tension, in the way everyone kept glancing that direction like weather was coming. He turned back to Dana. "Then why did you send a student to talk to them?" Donna didn't answer. Not because she didn't have one, because the wrong answer here would give Dalton a clean reason to escalate. Noah's pulse hammered. Tyler had made it outside. He had to have. Dana wouldn't have walked Noah into this office otherwise. Dalton smiled wider, almost delighted. No answer. All right, we'll do it my way. He turned to the principal. Mr. Keating, do we have access to the hall cameras outside lockers? The principal swallowed. Yes, Sheriff. Pull the footage, Dalton said. Now, I want to see who touched that locker. Dana's eyes narrowed. We're not consenting to a search of the child's belongings without counsel present. Dalton looked at her like she'd told a joke. Dana, you're not in court. You're in a school office. You don't get to consent to an investigation. Dana's voice stayed steady. He is a minor. The county attorney is on the way. We can wait. Dalton's smile thinned. We can. Or, he glanced at Noah, I can take him into protective custody. Noah's stomach dropped. Dana's body stiffened. On what grounds? Dalton raised his hand slightly. Grounds: public disorder, interference, evidence suggesting involvement in a theft, a child at risk of retaliation. He let that last part hang, then tilted his head toward the window again. Look outside, Dalton said softly. That's retaliation waiting to happen. Dana's eyes flashed. Those riders haven't threatened anyone. Dalton shrugged. Threats aren't always spoken. Noah's mouth went dry. Dalton wasn't trying to win an argument. He was building a story he could sell to the adults in the room. Dangerous bikers, unstable foster kid, responsible sheriff doing his job. Dana inhaled slowly, then did something Noah didn't expect. She lifted her own phone and said, clear and calm, Sheriff, I'm recording this conversation. The secretary sucked in a breath. Dalton's eyes flicked to the phone, then back to Dana's face. His smile didn't move, but it hardened. Of course you are, Dalton said. You want a show? No, Dana replied. I want a record. Dalton leaned back as if amused. Great, record this. He turned slightly, addressing the principal and the nearby teachers like he was giving a public statement. At approximately 9:12 a.m., Dalton said, I requested Noah Harlan to come to the office for questioning regarding evidence found in his locker connected to an ongoing investigation. His caseworker initially concealed him, delaying cooperation, due to the presence of an armed group outside the school. Reed's people were not armed, but Dalton said it like fact. I initiated a precautionary lockdown to protect students. Dana's jaw clenched. That is not accurate. Dalton continued smoothly. Noah has now arrived. I will ask him a few basic questions. If he refuses, I'll proceed with a protective hold until the situation is stabilized. Noah's heart hammered. He looked at Dana, hoping she'd stop Dalton from speaking directly to him. Dana stepped half a pace closer to Dalton, voice firm. Sheriff, Noah is not answering questions without counsel. Dalton looked past her at Noah. You hear your caseworker, Noah? Dalton asked, tone almost gentle. She's trying to help you, but you can help yourself too. Just answer one thing. Noah didn't speak. Dalton waited a beat, letting the silence build, then nodded toward the backpack. Did you put that patch in your locker? No, Noah said, voice raw. Dalton's eyebrows rose. No, Noah swallowed. It was there when I opened it. Dalton smiled slightly, as if Noah had stepped into the exact spot he wanted. So someone planted it. Noah hesitated, then nodded. Dalton turned his head toward the room. You all hear that? He said. He believes someone planted evidence in his locker. Dana cut in, sharp. He doesn't believe. That's what happened. Dalton's smile held. Then we should be able to confirm it on camera. He glanced at the principal again. Footage. The principal nodded too fast and backed away toward the monitor station. Noah's stomach twisted. If Dalton had access to the footage first, he could pick and choose what to show, what to cut, what to misinterpret. He could claim the patch was in Noah's hands at any point. He could say Noah was seen with Tyler. He could say anything. Dana seemed to read Noah's panic. Sheriff, she said, we want a copy of the footage, unedited. Dalton chuckled. You don't get to make demands. Dana's voice didn't waver. Then we're not doing this without the county attorney. Dalton's face hardened. You keep saying that like it's a shield. It's not. He stepped closer to Noah now, lowering his voice again. Noah, Dalton said, I can make this simple. You cooperate, you go back to class, everyone calms down. You don't cooperate, and you spend the afternoon in a station interview room while the internet decides you're guilty. Noah's throat tightened. I didn't do it. Dalton nodded slowly. Then tell me who did. Noah stared at him. I don't know. Dalton's eyes narrowed. You said you heard a whistle. You said the dog ran to someone. You saw a figure. Noah felt the pressure climb. Dalton was stacking Noah's own words against him, shaping them into a confession. I didn't see their face, Noah said. They were in the trees. Dalton tilted his head. But you heard a whistle, a signal whistle. That's what you said. He smiled slightly. Do you know who uses signal whistles, Noah? Noah didn't answer. Dalton's voice became soft, persuasive. Groups, clubs, people who coordinate. Donna's tone snapped. Stop leading him. Dalton ignored her. You want to protect someone outside? He asked Noah. Someone on those bikes? Noah's stomach flipped. No, Dalton's smile widened. Because the story I'm hearing, he said, is that this was planned, that you walked out there with a purpose, that you staged a rescue so you could get close to that dog and take something off its collar. Noah's eyes widened. That's insane. Dalton nodded like he agreed. And yet, he said, tapping the desk once, the patch ends up in your locker, and those bikes show up the next day, and your caseworker starts making calls and hiding you in storage rooms. Dana stepped forward, voice low and furious. I did not hide him. I protected him. Dalton finally looked at her fully. From what, Dana? Dana didn't blink. From you. For a moment, the room went dead still. Even the secretary stopped moving. The principal's hands froze above the keyboard in the monitor area. Dalton's smile faded. Be careful, he said quietly. Dana held his gaze. I am. Noah's pulse hammered so hard he could feel it in his fingertips. A crackle sounded from the deputy's radio by the wall, quiet at first, then clearer. The deputy glanced down, listened, then looked up at Dalton with a question in his eyes. Dalton walked 2 steps away from Noah, took the deputy's radio microphone, and spoke into it in a calm, controlled voice. Unit 2, Dalton said. Status. A faint reply came through, tinny but loud enough that Noah caught the words. Front curb, bikers, refusing to disperse. Dalton nodded slowly. Copy. He clicked the mic off and turned back to the room, face composed again. See, Dalton said, it's escalating, and when it escalates, kids get hurt. Noah realized what Dalton was doing. He was building urgency, a crisis, a reason to bypass counsel, bypass procedure, bypass everything. Dana's phone was still recording. She held it steady, but her breathing had quickened. The principal cleared his throat, voice shaking. Sheriff, the county attorney's office called. They said someone is en route. Dalton's eyes flicked to him. How long? The principal hesitated. 10 minutes, maybe more. Dalton smiled again, but it wasn't friendly. 10 minutes is too long when a school's in lockdown. He turned to Noah. Noah, I'm offering you a way out. Tell me one name, one person who could have whistled. Noah's mind screamed, don't. He thought of Reed's warning. Don't talk, don't sign, don't panic. But he also thought of the patch in his locker, the planted evidence, the way Dalton said protective hold like it was a favor. I don't know, Noah said again, voice shaking. Dalton's eyes hardened. Then I'm done being patient. He nodded at the deputy. Protective hold, Dalton said. Dana moved instantly. No. The deputy stepped forward, hand lifting, not to grab Noah, but to position himself between Noah and the door, cutting off exit. Noah's stomach dropped. You can't. Dalton's voice was calm, almost bored. I can, and I am. Donna lifted her phone higher. Sheriff, state statute requires. Dalton cut her off. Dana, stop performing. He stepped closer to Noah again and spoke quietly, only for Noah. This is where you decide, Dalton said. You want to be the foster kid who saved a dog, or the foster kid who got arrested and moved for everyone's safety? Noah's throat tightened, his vision tunneled. Then, from outside, faint through the walls, came a low rumble. Engines, not revving, not roaring, just turning over. Many of them, one after another, like a coordinated response. Dalton's eyes flicked toward the window. He listened, his jaw tightened. Dana's gaze snapped to Noah, a silent message. Tyler made it. The principal's face went pale. He looked like he wanted to vomit. The deputy shifted uneasily, hand drifting toward his belt. Dalton's smile returned, thin, controlled, dangerous. All right, Dalton said, voice louder now for the room. New plan. He turned to the principal. End the lockdown, now. The principal blinked. What? Dalton's eyes stayed on the window. End it. We don't need a building full of kids when this turns into a street problem. Dana's voice sharpened. You don't get to decide what this turns into. Dalton ignored her. He looked at Noah again, eyes flat. You're coming with me, Dalton said. Not to the station, to the lake. Noah's stomach dropped. What? Dalton leaned in slightly, voice low. You wanted to talk about a whistle and a figure in the trees? Great. You're going to walk me through exactly where it happened, right now. Donna snapped. Absolutely not. Dalton's eyes flicked to her phone. You can come too, he said sweetly. Bring your recording. Bring your lawyer when they arrive. His smile thinned. If they can catch up. Noah's heartbeat slammed in his ears. The lake, the trees, the exact place where someone had stepped back and vanished. Dalton wasn't taking him there to find truth. He was taking him there to control the scene. The deputy stepped closer, ready to escort. Dinah moved with him, planting herself in front of Noah. He is not leaving this building. Dalton's smile vanished. His voice dropped to something cold and final. Dana, Dalton said, move. And the last thing Noah saw before the deputy's hand reached toward his arm was Dana lifting her phone higher and saying, loud and clear, Sheriff Dalton, are you ordering me to surrender a child in my care without counsel present, yes or no? Dana's phone was held high now, her voice steady and loud enough that the secretary behind the counter flinched. Sheriff Dalton, are you ordering me to surrender a child in my care without counsel present, yes or no? For the first time all morning, Dalton didn't answer immediately. He stood there with the deputy half a step behind him, the office suddenly too quiet, everyone waiting to see which mask he'd pick, the community protector or the man who did whatever he wanted. Dalton's eyes flicked to the phone, then to the principal, then to Noah. Then back to Dana, and he smiled again, smaller, controlled. Dana, he said, voice smooth, I'm ordering you to cooperate with an investigation for the safety of this school. Dana didn't blink. That's not what I asked. Dalton's jaw tightened a fraction. He took a half step back, lifting both hands like a man who'd been misunderstood. Fine. Here's your answer. He looked around the office deliberately, making sure the room was watching. Yes, I'm ordering you to release the child into my custody under a protective hold based on evidence tied to an active investigation and immediate safety concerns. Dana held the phone steady. Thank you, she said quietly. Noah's stomach dropped. The words protective hold sounded like a blanket, but Noah knew what it meant in Dalton's mouth. Isolation, control, a story written without him in it. The deputy moved. Donna moved too. She stepped sideways, blocking the deputy's path to Noah, still not touching him, still not giving Dalton the visual he wanted. No struggle, no scene. You're making a mistake, Dana said, voice calm but edged. Dalton's smile didn't move. I'm making a decision, something you people forgot how to do. Dana's eyes flashed. You're doing this because you're scared of what's on that video. Dalton's smile froze for half a second, not long enough for anyone who didn't know him to notice, long enough for Noah. Then Dalton laughed softly. Video? Dana, you're spiraling. Noah's heart hammered. Dana had baited him and it landed. Dalton leaned toward the principal. Mr. Keating, end the lockdown, he said again. Now. The principal swallowed. Sheriff. Now, Dalton repeated, the word cutting. The principal's hands shook as he reached for the intercom. His voice came out thin. Attention, lockdown is lifted. Students resume normal movement. The second the words left the speaker, the hallway outside exploded back into life. Doors opening, students spilling out, noise rising like a wave. The office windows caught flickers of motion as kids rushed toward the front to see what was happening. Dalton wanted that. Noise covered rough moves. Noise confused witnesses. Noise turned a clean line into blur. He turned back to Noah. You're coming with me, Dalton said, to the lake. Dana's voice sharpened. You're not taking him anywhere. If you move him, you're doing it under my recorded objection. Dalton's eyes stayed on Noah. Bring your phone, he told Dana. Bring your objections. You're still coming. The deputy finally reached for Noah's arm. Noah flinched before he could stop himself. The flinch felt like a confession in a room full of predators. Reed's warning echoed in his skull. Don't panic. Don't run. Dana snapped, Don't touch him. The deputy hesitated, glancing at Dalton. Dalton didn't look at the deputy. He kept his eyes on Noah, voice low enough that it felt like a private threat wrapped in guidance. "If you cooperate," Dalton murmured, "this can end today." Noah swallowed hard. "I didn't do anything." Dalton nodded as if he'd expected that. "Then show me, walk me through it, prove it." Donna leaned closer to Noah, whispering without moving her lips much. "Say nothing else. Let him talk. Stay close to me." Noah's lungs barely worked. He nodded once. Dalton gestured toward the side door that led out of the office into a staff parking area. Less public than the front entrance, fewer phones. Of course he'd picked that route. "Let's go," Dalton said. Dana didn't move until the last possible second. Then she walked beside Noah, phone up, recording, her shoulder nearly brushing his. The deputy followed. Another deputy joined them in the hallway, appearing like he'd been waiting nearby. As they moved, students poured into the hall, eyes wide, phones up again, hungry for the next angle. Teachers shouted to keep order, but no one really tried. They were watching. Tyler, the varsity kid, stood near a drinking fountain, pale and shaking, avoiding everyone's eyes. When Noah passed him, Tyler's gaze flicked up for a split second, guilty and terrified, then away. Noah knew Tyler had done what Dinah asked. The engines outside confirmed it. They reached the staff exit. The cold air hit Noah like a slap when the door opened. Outside, the sound was low and heavy. Dozens of motorcycles idling, not roaring, positioned along the curb like a wall of metal and intention. Students clustered behind the main entrance glass, pressed to windows like fish in an aquarium. Reed stood near the front of the line, helmet under one arm, face unreadable. Beside him stood a woman Noah hadn't seen before. Blonde hair in a tight bun, long coat, a messenger bag at her side. She looked like she belonged in a courtroom, not on a curb. An attorney. Noah's chest loosened by a fraction. Dalton saw her too, and his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Dana angled her phone slightly toward the attorney, still recording. "County counsel?" Dana asked quietly, just loud enough. The woman nodded once. "I'm here," she said. "Stop moving him." Dalton's smile returned, practiced. "Ma'am, this is a protective hold. He's cooperating with an investigation." The attorney stepped forward. "No, Sheriff. You're attempting to relocate a minor without proper basis while evidence of misconduct is circulating. He's not going anywhere." Dalton's eyes narrowed. "Evidence of misconduct," he repeated, as if amused. Reed finally spoke, voice calm, carrying. "We have the clip." Dalton's smile froze again. The attorney turned slightly toward Reed. "Do not play it here," she said. "Send it, preserve it." Reed nodded once, then looked at Noah. Not a smile, not comfort, just steady presence. Dalton's gaze snapped between them. Dana recording, attorney present, bikes lined up, kids watching behind glass. Too many witnesses, too much control slipping. So Dalton shifted tactics again. He lifted his voice for the crowd behind the glass to hear through the door. "Everyone stay back," he called. "This is an active investigation." Then he stepped closer to Noah, lowering his voice, and said the quiet part like a knife. "You think they're saving you," Dalton murmured. "They're using you." Noah's throat tightened. Dalton straightened and addressed the attorney. "If you want to make this difficult, I can detain him right here." The attorney didn't blink. "Do it. On camera, with a recorded objection and a child advocate present." Dalton's eyes flicked to Dana's phone again. He could hear the ticking of his own words becoming a file. For the first time, Dalton looked cornered. But cornered people didn't stop. They lashed. Dalton turned abruptly toward the deputies. "Clear the front," he ordered. "Move the crowd back. I don't want kids between bikes and badges." A deputy started toward the main entrance, radio crackling. Reed's line tightened slightly, riders shifting like a synchronized breath. Still no threats, still no weapons, just a wall that wouldn't flinch. Then, from the far end of the parking lot, a van rolled in, plain white, no markings, moving too slow, too smooth. It stopped near the edge of the staff lot like it had been invited. Dalton's eyes flicked toward it for half a heartbeat. Noah noticed. Reed noticed. The attorney noticed, because her gaze snapped there instantly. The side door of the van slid open, and a black and tan dog jumped out, landing stiffly, shaking once like it was cold to the bone. Ranger. For 1 second, the entire world paused. Then Ranger turned his head, ears back, scanning, until his eyes landed on Reed. The dog bolted toward him, fast, desperate, whining in a way Noah hadn't heard on the ice. This wasn't panic. It was relief mixed with fear. Reed dropped to one knee automatically, catching Ranger by the chest and collar, hands moving like someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Ranger pressed in, trembling. Noah's breath caught hard. The collar on Ranger's neck was different now. New strap, no patch. And as Reed held the dog, Ranger suddenly twisted his head and growled, not at Reed, at the van, at the open door. A man stepped out of the van slowly, hands raised, face half hidden under a cap. Dalton's deputy started toward him, but Dalton lifted a hand, stopping the deputy without even looking. That single motion was small, but it said everything. Because Dalton wasn't surprised the van was there. He was managing it. The attorney's voice cut through, sharp. "Sheriff, who is that?" Dalton smiled again, too late, too thin. "Just someone returning the dog," he said. Reed stood up, Ranger pressed tight against his leg, trembling. And Noah realized the dog wasn't just evidence. Ranger was a witness. Because the moment the man took one more step forward, Ranger lunged, snapping, barking, violent in a way service dogs weren't supposed to be. Like he recognized the scent, like he recognized the danger. And the last thing Noah saw before the deputies surged forward was Dalton's eyes flicking to Dana's phone, then to the attorney, then to Noah, calculating how to turn this into a new story, right as Reed's voice went low and deadly calm. "That's the man who whistled." The man by the van froze with his hands still raised, like he'd been practicing the pose. Ranger didn't care. The dog's bark cut through the parking lot, deep, sharp, pure warning. He lunged again, claws scraping asphalt, body straining against Reed's grip. It wasn't random aggression, it was targeted. Ranger's entire focus was locked on that man. Reed didn't yank the dog back violently. He held him with control, one hand firm at the collar, the other bracing Ranger's chest, voice low in the dog's ear. "Easy," Reed murmured. "Easy, Ranger." But Ranger kept growling, lips pulled back, teeth flashing. Noah saw the dog's eyes, wide, tense, certain. "That's the man who whistled," Reed said again, louder, and the words hit the air like a verdict. The attorney snapped her head toward Dalton. "Sheriff, identify him." Dalton's smile was still on his face, but it was the kind of smile that happened when someone's mouth moved faster than their brain. "I don't know him," Dalton said smoothly. "He's returning the dog, that's all." Dana's phone was up, recording every syllable. The attorney didn't blink. "Then you'll have no issue with my office taking his statement first." Dalton's eyes tightened. "Ma'am, I'm the sheriff. This is my jurisdiction." The attorney stepped closer, calm and sharp. "And he is a witness in a case involving a minor, potential evidence tampering, and allegations against your department. My jurisdiction is the child, not your ego." A deputy started toward the man. Dalton lifted a hand again, stopping him. Not a shout, not a command, just a small gesture. The deputy froze mid-step. Noah felt his stomach drop. Dalton was controlling the scene by reflex. He didn't even have to think about it. Reed noticed too. His face didn't change, but his voice went quiet and hard. "Tell your man to keep walking," Reed said to Dalton. "See what happens on this recording." Dalton finally looked at Reed. "You want to threaten me on school property?" Reed's eyes stayed steady. "I want you to stop touching the pieces while pretending you're solving the puzzle." Ranger growled again, louder, dragging Reed a half step forward. The man by the van flinched, hands still up, but his eyes were darting, looking for an exit, looking for Dalton, looking for permission. The attorney pointed. "Sir, stay where you are. Give me your name." The man's mouth opened. He hesitated. Then he said, I'm just helping. I found the dog." "Found him where?" Dana asked, voice tight. The man swallowed. "Near the marina." Noah's pulse hammered. "Of course." Dalton's smile flickered like a light bulb. "See?" he said quickly. "That's what I said." "Marina. That's where this all connects." The attorney cut him off. "Sheriff, do not narrate. Let the witness speak." Dalton's jaw clenched. Reed shifted Ranger behind his leg, still holding him, keeping the dog from launching again. Ranger's body trembled with restrained fury. The attorney looked back at the man. "How did you know whose dog it was?" The man blinked. People were talking." "People," Dana repeated. Who? The man glanced toward Dalton for a fraction of a second. Noah saw it. Reed saw it. Dana saw it. The attorney saw it too. She turned her head slowly to Dalton. Interesting, she said. Dalton shrugged, too casual. He looked at me. So what? People know me. I'm the sheriff. Reed's voice dropped. He looked at you like you were his handler. Dalton's eyes sharpened. Watch your mouth. The attorney stepped between them, cutting off the testosterone theater. Sir, she said to the man, I'm going to ask you again. How did you get Ranger into that van? The man swallowed hard. He was cold. I had food. Ranger snarled, louder than before. Reed tightened his grip. He doesn't take food from strangers, Reed said flatly. Not when he's working. Dalton cut in fast, trying to seize the narrative. Dogs are dogs. They do what they do. Reed's eyes locked on Dalton. This one doesn't. Dana's phone caught everything. Dalton interrupting, deflecting, steering. The attorney's calm questions. The man's glances. And then Tyler appeared at the edge of the staff lot, having slipped out with the students who'd poured toward the windows. He stood half hidden behind a trash can, face white, phone clenched like a confession. He looked at Noah. Noah looked back. Tyler mouthed 2 words, barely visible. I'm sorry. Then Tyler lifted his phone and walked toward Dana, hands shaking like he'd finally decided which side of the story he wanted to live on. Dalton saw him too. Dalton's head snapped toward Tyler, his eyes narrowed, not anger, not surprise, calculation. Like he was counting how many variables were about to flip. Tyler stopped a few feet away from Dana and held his phone out, voice trembling. I got messages, Tyler said. From the account. The one that posted the videos. They told me what to say. They told me when to show clips. Dana's breath caught. Who is they? Tyler swallowed. I don't know. He tapped his screen, scrolling fast. They sent me the video of the whistle, and his voice cracked. They sent me the hospital picture too, before it got posted, like minutes before. The attorney's eyes sharpened. Show me. Tyler held the phone out. Dana didn't take it. She kept recording. Say it out loud, she instructed. What did they send you and when? Tyler looked around, seeing the bikes, the deputies, the teachers watching from the side door, the principal hovering like he wanted to disappear. Then he said it, louder. They sent me the hospital photo last night at 8:46. They said, post this, it'll blow up. Then they sent me the whistle video this morning and told me to bring it to Dana. And then they told me Dalton would say the patch was in Noah's locker. The parking lot went still. Even Dalton's deputies looked uncertain now, because this wasn't kids and rumors anymore. This was coordination. Dalton's smile returned, forced. He's a teenager chasing attention, Dalton said. This is what teenagers do. Tyler's face twisted. No, this is what I did because I thought it was funny, but it wasn't funny. Tyler stopped himself, eyes flicking to Dalton's badge, fear rising. Dalton stepped forward slightly. Careful, son. The attorney's voice snapped like a whip. Sheriff, do not intimidate a witness. Dalton's eyes flashed. He's not a witness. He's a kid who posts videos. Donna's voice was steady, recording everything. He is a witness to the distribution of evidence and manipulation of a minor's case. Reed's hand stayed on Ranger, but his gaze locked on Dalton with a quiet intensity. You lost control of this, Reed said. Dalton's jaw flexed. No, he said softly. I'm taking it back. He turned to the deputy who'd been stopped earlier and nodded once. Different than before. Not a pause. A go-ahead. Detain him, Dalton said, voice calm. Noah's stomach dropped. Who? Tyler. But the deputy didn't move toward Tyler. He moved toward Noah. Donna reacted instantly, stepping in, phone still recording. No, he's not being detained. Dalton's voice stayed even. Protective hold, he said, as if repeating it made it clean. He's at the center of this incident. He's a flight risk with bikers encouraging him. Reed's voice went low. Touch him and you're done. Dalton swung his gaze to Reed. Is that a threat? It's a promise, Reed said. The attorney stepped forward, sharp. Sheriff, if you lay hands on that child while county council is present, on record, with evidence of witness manipulation, you are exposing your department to... Dalton cut her off, raising his voice suddenly so the students at the windows could hear. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Armed men, intimidation, chaos. I'm removing the child for safety." Noah's heart hammered as the deputy reached again. Donna shifted, blocking, and for the first time, Noah saw her drop the calm entirely. "You are not taking him," Dana said, voice shaking with rage. "Not like this." Dalton's eyes went cold. "Then move." The deputy's hand was inches from Noah's arm, when Ranger did something Noah didn't expect. The dog snapped his head away from the man by the van and lunged toward the deputy's hand, teeth flashing. Not to bite. He stopped short, barking explosive warning inches from skin. The deputy jerked back instantly. Ranger planted himself between Noah and the deputy, body rigid, growl deep and continuous. Every person in that lot froze. Service dogs didn't do that, unless they recognized a threat. Dalton's face tightened. "Control your dog," he snapped at Reed. Reed's voice was low. "He's controlled. He's protecting." The attorney's eyes were on Ranger now, then on Dalton. "Why would a trained service animal react like that to your deputy, Sheriff?" Dalton's smile was gone. "Because it's an animal." Dana's phone caught Dalton's face in that moment, tight, angry, cornered. And then, from the side door of the school, the principal stumbled out with a laptop in his hands, breathless, face gray. "Sheriff," he stammered, "the footage, the locker hallway footage, it's missing. The cameras didn't record this morning." Dalton went very still. "What?" Dalton said softly. The principal swallowed hard. "The system shows an outage from 7:50 to 9:05. Noah's stomach flipped. That was exactly the window where the backpack and patch could have been planted. The attorney's voice turned ice cold. "Convenient." Dalton's eyes burned. "Fix it," he snapped at the principal. The principal shook his head. It's not a glitch, Sheriff. Someone manually disabled the feed." Silence. Dana's voice was quiet now, deadly. "Someone with access." Dalton's jaw clenched so hard the muscle jumped, and in that silence, Reed spoke one sentence, calm as a verdict, looking straight at Dalton. "You didn't just frame a foster kid," Reed said. "You tampered with a school's security system to do it." Dalton's gaze flicked, fast, toward the white van, toward the man who'd whistled, toward the deputy radios. Then, Dalton made his move. He pointed at Reed's line of bikes and shouted, "Everyone back inside, now! Those men are obstructing an investigation!" And at the same time, he turned to his deputies and said, low enough that only the closest heard, "Get the dog, get the kid, now!" The parking lot exploded into motion. The parking lot stopped being a standoff and turned into a collision in the space of one breath. Dalton's deputies moved first, quick, trained, hands out, bodies angling to cut off paths. At the same time, two riders stepped forward from Reed's line without rushing, just closing distance in a way that made it impossible for a deputy to accidentally grab Noah without everyone seeing it. Dinah's phone stayed up, but her other hand snapped out and caught Noah's sleeve, pulling him a half-step back behind her shoulder. "Do not touch him," she said, loud, shaking, furious. Dalton pointed again, louder for the kids behind glass. "Back inside, now! This is a dangerous situation." The principal stumbled backward toward the door like he'd been slapped, and teachers started herding students away from the windows. Too late, because half the school was already recording. The deputy closest to Noah hesitated at Ranger's growl. The dog's body was rigid, a living barrier, teeth bared just enough to promise consequences. "Control your dog," Dalton snapped at Reed. Reed didn't raise his voice. "He is controlled," he said. "He's warning you." Dalton's eyes flashed. "A service dog doesn't behave like that unless someone trained it to attack." Reed's face didn't change. "Or unless it recognizes a threat." That landed harder than a shout. Even one of Dalton's deputies flicked a glance at Dalton, then back at the dog, like he didn't want to be the one who found out which was true. The attorney moved fast now, stepping in front of Noah with Dana, making a wall of adults in county coats and winter jackets. "Sheriff," she said, crisp, "you have been informed counsel is present. You have been informed there is evidence suggesting tampering. You do anything physical now, it becomes criminal exposure on record." Dalton's jaw tightened. "You're overstepping." The attorney didn't blink. "You're panicking." That word hit Dalton like a match. Dalton's eyes went past them, toward the van, toward the man who'd whistled. The man had started to edge backward as soon as motion erupted, like he'd been waiting for the signal to vanish. Ranger lunged again, barking, dragging Reed a step. Reed tightened his grip, kept Ranger close, but the dog's focus stayed locked on that man. "Stop!" Dana shouted, not at the dog, at the man. "Do not leave!" The man froze for half a second, then he turned and bolted. Everything snapped. 2 deputies ran after him. A rider moved too, not to chase, but to block the van door. Another rider stepped into the van's path, hands out, forcing it to stay put without touching it. Dalton's head whipped toward the riders. "Get out of the way!" he barked, and it was the first time his voice sounded like a man losing control instead of managing it. Noah's stomach dropped because he understood what Dalton was trying to do. Trigger a confrontation, make a biker shove a deputy, make it messy, make the cameras catch the wrong 5 seconds. But Reed's people didn't shove. They didn't swing. They did something worse for Dalton. They stayed disciplined. They held positions like a line of grown men who had nothing to prove and everything to protect. One of the deputies caught up to the fleeing man and grabbed his arm. The man twisted hard and slipped free like he'd done it before. The second deputy tackled him near the curb. The man hit the ground, cap flying off, face finally clear to everyone watching. Noah didn't know him, not personally, but he recognized something about him anyway. The posture, the way his eyes darted toward Dalton even while pinned, like he was looking for approval. Dalton strode that direction fast, but the attorney stepped after him, staying close enough that Dalton couldn't pretend she wasn't there. "Sheriff," she said sharply, "do not speak to him without counsel, present for the child, and a separate investigator present for your department." Dalton stopped mid-stride, forced his shoulders down, forced calm back onto his face. Then he did what he always did. He shifted the story. He turned toward the school windows, lifted his voice into protector mode, and said, "This is what I'm dealing with. Outsiders. Criminals. People using kids and animals to stir up chaos." Dana's phone caught him performing. The attorney's face stayed hard. Reed's face stayed still. And then Tyler, pale, shaking, did the one thing Dalton couldn't control. Tyler stepped forward into the open and raised his voice, cracking but loud. "That's a lie," Tyler said. Every head turned. Dalton's eyes narrowed. "Go back inside," he ordered, the command automatic. Tyler swallowed, terrified, and kept going anyway. "You told everyone the cameras glitched," Tyler blurted. "But my uncle works IT for the district. He texted me just now. He said the feed didn't glitch. It was shut off manually from the admin panel." The principal flinched like he'd been punched in the gut. Dalton's face tightened. "Enough," he said, stepping forward. The attorney snapped, "Do not intimidate another minor." Tyler's voice shook harder. "And the account that posted the videos, it messaged me again just now. It said, 'Stay quiet or you'll end up like Noah.'" Noah's throat closed. The air felt thin. Dana spoke, steady and loud, so it landed on recording. "Tyler, read that message out loud." Tyler fumbled, then held up his phone like it weighed a ton. "It says, 'Stay quiet or you'll end up like Noah. Sheriff's got you too.'" The last sentence hit the crowd like a slap. Dalton's smile tried to return and couldn't find its way back. "This is teenage drama," he said, too quick. "This is what social media does." Reed cut in, calm and final. "It does what you feed it." The attorney turned to Dana. "Send me the whistle clip now. Full file, time-stamped. Don't play it here." Dana already had it queued. She tapped send. "Done." The attorney turned toward the deputy radios and said, clear and cold, "I want state investigators requested immediately. Not later. Not, we'll see. Immediately." Dalton's head snapped. "You don't get to call state." The attorney didn't look at him. She looked at the principal. "Mr. Keating, you will call the district superintendent right now and report a manual shutdown of your security system during an active investigation involving a minor. If you don't, I will." The principal's hands shook as he pulled his phone out. He nodded rapidly, words caught in his throat, then stepped aside and started dialing. Dalton saw the center of gravity shifting away from him, and he tried to grab it back with the only tool he had left. He turned toward Noah and said, "Noah, tell them. Tell them you don't feel safe with these men outside." The trap was obvious. If Noah agreed, Dalton got his story. Bikers are the threat. If Noah refused, Dalton could say Noah was under influence. Noah's chest tightened. He looked at Dana. She didn't speak. She just held his gaze like a steady hand. Noah looked at Reed. Reed didn't beg. He didn't glare. He just stood there with Ranger pressed against his leg, the dog trembling, eyes still fixed on Dalton with quiet hatred. Noah swallowed and did the only thing that felt true. "I don't feel safe with you," Noah said. The sentence landed like a rock. Dalton's eyes went flat. "Excuse me?" Dana's phone caught every millisecond of Dalton's face changing. Noah's voice shook, but he forced it steady. "You told my caseworker you'd move me. You said foster placements don't like risk. You called me a suspect before you asked me anything. You said I couldn't leave town. Noah's throat tightened, but he pushed through. "You were on that ice. You cut the patch. You put it in my locker." The office staff by the door stared. The principal's call went quiet for a second as he listened and spoke in a panicked whisper to someone higher up. Dalton's jaw clenched. "That's a serious accusation." "It's the truth," Noah said. For a heartbeat, Dalton looked like he might step forward and forget every witness. Then Ranger barked, one sharp warning, and Dalton stopped himself. The attorney stepped between them again, voice clipped. "Sheriff, you are now on notice. Do not approach the child." Dalton's lips pressed into a line. He looked around like he was searching for any friendly face, any adult who would let him turn this back into misunderstood sheriff versus unruly crowd. But nobody moved. Not even his own deputies looked comfortable anymore. One of them kept glancing at the man pinned on the ground, the whistler, like the deputy had just realized he'd been chasing the wrong person all week. The attorney crouched slightly to Noah's level without making it sentimental. "Noah," she said, "I need one clear statement for the record. Did you take that patch off the dog's collar?" "No," Noah said. "Did you instruct anyone else to take it?" "No." "Did you place it in your locker?" "No." The attorney nodded once. "Good." She stood and looked at Dalton. "Your protective hold is revoked. You have no lawful basis to remove him at this time, given the evidence of tampering and witness intimidation." "Step back." Dalton's eyes burned. "You can't revoke." "I can," the attorney said, "and I just did." The superintendent call must have landed because the principal's face crumpled as he listened. Then he said, trembling, Yes, I understand. Right now. Yes, sir." He ended the call and looked at Dalton like he'd never seen him before. "Sheriff," the principal said, voice cracking, "the superintendent is sending district security and requesting state oversight. You need to stand down." Dalton stared at him, stunned for half a second that anyone would speak to him like that. Then Dalton's face hardened into something ugly. He looked at Reed, then at Dana, then at Noah, and Noah felt it. The moment Dalton decided if he couldn't win clean, he'd try to burn the whole thing down. Dalton lifted his chin and said, loud, "For the windows, for the cameras, for the town, this is what happens when you let criminals run your community." Reed didn't move. "Walk away," Reed said quietly. "While you still can." Dalton's eyes flashed. He looked at the deputy pinning the whistler. "Get him in the car." The deputy hesitated, just a heartbeat, then complied, hauling the man up. The man wouldn't stop looking at Dalton like he expected rescue. Dalton didn't give it. He gave distance. He turned sharply toward his cruiser, shoulders stiff, and started walking. Not defeated. Retreating to regroup. Dana's phone stayed on him until he reached the driver's door. Dalton paused, hand on the handle, and looked back one last time at Noah. His eyes were cold, steady, and full of promise. And in that look, Noah understood the most dangerous thing wasn't that Dalton had almost won today. It was that Dalton believed he could still win tomorrow.